Standing in the quiet chill of an English morning, watching the first rays of the summer solstice sun slice perfectly between the towering stones of Stonehenge, it is almost impossible not to feel a profound sense of wonder. You are witnessing an event meticulously engineered thousands of years ago, a celestial handshake between earth and sky that repeats with unwavering precision across the centuries. This is not merely an old pile of rocks. It is a sophisticated astronomical instrument, a testament to a deep and sophisticated understanding of the cosmos that seems to defy the very tools and knowledge we typically attribute to ancient peoples. And as awe-inspiring as Stonehenge is, it represents just a single piece of a much larger, global puzzle, a puzzle we are about to assemble together. From the sun-scorched deserts of Peru to the remote islands of the Pacific, our ancestors left behind a series of architectural whispers, monuments that speak a silent language of alignment with the stars, the sun, and the moon. These are not random placements. They are deliberate, precise, and they challenge everything we think we know about the timeline of human discovery and the capabilities of early civilizations. Why would cultures separated by vast oceans and by thousands of years, with no conceivable way to communicate, all invest immense amounts of labor and resources to build structures that point toward the same celestial events? What deep, universal human impulse drove them to reach for the heavens with stone and earth? The answers to these questions suggest a narrative far richer than our history books often tell. They hint at a lost chapter in the human story, a shared instinct or perhaps a forgotten knowledge that connected disparate peoples through a common understanding of the universe. This is not just about archaeology or astronomy. It is about the very essence of human curiosity and our eternal desire to find our place in the grand cosmos. In this video, we will embark on an extraordinary journey to uncover 25 of the world's most baffling and beautiful monument alignments. We will travel across continents and through millennia, from the Great Pyramid's mirror of Orion's belt to the mysterious Moai of Easter Island gazing at the Pleiades. We will delve into the origins of these sites, explore the compelling theories that attempt to explain their existence, and piece together what these incredible achievements reveal about our ancestors' intimate connection to the cosmos. This is more than a list, it is a voyage of discovery. Each alignment we explore is a clue, a piece of evidence in the great mystery of our past. So, settle in and open your mind to the possibilities, because we are about to journey through time and space, exploring the silent stones and ancient temples that hold the secrets to humanity's most enigmatic achievements. Gaze up at the clear, dark sky over the Egyptian desert, and you will see one of the most recognizable patterns in the heavens, the three brilliant stars of Orion's belt shining in a perfect straight line. Now lower your eyes to the sands of the Giza plateau, and you will witness something astonishing. The three great pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure are arranged in a layout that mirrors those celestial lights with an uncanny precision. It is as if the very sky was brought down to earth, frozen in stone for eternity. This profound connection, known as the Orion correlation theory, was first brought to widespread attention in the 1990s by author Robert Bovell, and it has ignited one of the most passionate debates in modern archaeology. The theory suggests that the relative positions and sizes of the three main pyramids are a deliberate terrestrial map of the three stars of Orion's belt. But the controversy runs even deeper. Bovell and others, like researcher Graham Hancock, propose that this celestial map was intended to be read at a very specific moment in time, a time far older than conventional history allows. They argue that the pyramids align perfectly with the constellation, not as it appeared around 2500 BCE, the accepted date of their construction, but as it would have looked in the sky some 12,000 years ago, around 10,500 BCE. This radical idea points to the existence of a sophisticated, advanced civilization that was lost to the sands of time, a civilization that possessed astronomical knowledge so profound it would not be matched for millennia. Mainstream Egyptology, of course, strongly disputes this timeline, standing by the orthodox dating based on radiocarbon evidence and historical records. Skeptics suggest the correlation is merely a coincidence, or perhaps a symbolic interpretation applied by later cultures. Yet, the alignment is only one part of an almost unbelievable series of engineering marvels. Consider the foundational orientation of the Great Pyramid itself. Its four corners are aligned to the four cardinal directions north, south, east, and west, with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree. To achieve this level of precision using only primitive tools is a feat that modern engineers still struggle to fully explain. It demonstrates a grasp of spherical astronomy and geometry that seems to defy the technological context of the ancient world. The mathematical precision extends further. The pyramid's perimeter, when divided by its height, yields a value extremely close to 2 pi, suggesting an early understanding of this fundamental constant. The cultural significance of Orion, known to the ancient Egyptians as Sa, the constellation of the god Osiris, adds another layer of meaning. Osiris was the lord of the afterlife, the god of death and resurrection. By aligning their pharaoh's eternal resting places with the stars of Osiris, they were literally connecting the soul of the king to the realm of the gods, creating a divine staircase to heaven. This celestial connection was woven into the very fabric of their worldview. The Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt, was seen as the earthly reflection of the Milky Way, the great celestial river in the sky. In this grand cosmology, the pyramids at Giza were not just tombs, they were the focal point where the earthly and heavenly realms met. This has led some to explore even more speculative ideas, such as the ancient astronaut theory, which posits that such advanced knowledge could have been imparted by extraterrestrial visitors. While this remains a fringe view, it underscores the profound mystery that the Giza Plateau represents. Was the alignment a deliberate message from a lost age, a way for its builders to encode a critical piece of astronomical data for future generations? Or is it the ultimate expression of a human desire to find order in the cosmos, to build monuments that testify to our enduring fascination with the stars? The silent stones of Giza do not give up their secrets easily, but they continue to challenge us to rethink the origins of human knowledge and the true capabilities of our ancestors. Now, let us transport ourselves from the Egyptian desert to the stark, otherworldly landscape of the Peruvian coastal plain. Here, etched into the sun-baked earth on a scale so immense it defies comprehension, are the Nazca Lines. Picture a sprawling canvas of reddish-brown desert pavement, from which immense geometric shapes, straight lines running for miles, and colossal figures of animals, a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider, a monkey with a spiraling tail have been revealed by the simple act of removing the dark surface stones to expose the lighter soil beneath. These are not small carvings, they are geoglyphs on a monumental scale, some stretching over 200 meters across. Designs so vast their true form can only be fully appreciated from the air, a perspective the Nazca people themselves seemingly never possessed. Discovered by the modern world only in the 1920s as commercial air travel began, these lines were created by the Nazca culture over a 1,000-year period. from roughly 500 years before the Common Era to 500 years after. Their purpose has been a riddle ever since, sparking theories that range from the practical to the profound, from intricate astronomical calendars to sacred pathways for ritual processions. The dedication of one woman, a German mathematician named Maria Reich, became synonymous with the quest to understand these desert mysteries. She devoted her life to mapping and protecting the lines, living for decades in a small house near the desert. Reich championed the idea that the Nazca Lines were a giant astronomical calendar, an almanac written upon the earth. She proposed that many of the long, arrow-straight lines and geometric shapes aligned with the rising and setting points of the sun, moon, and stars on the horizon during key celestial events, such as the winter solstice sunrise. Her meticulous work suggested that the Nazca used these alignments to mark the changing seasons, a critical tool for an agricultural society living in one of the driest places on Earth. This astronomical connection deepens when we examine specific glyphs. The famous spider glyph, for instance, is not just a random insect. Researchers have noted that its carefully rendered form, particularly the arrangement of its legs, may correspond to the constellation of Orion, a celestial pattern we saw revered half a world away in Egypt. Another glyph, known as the monkey, has been linked to the Pleiades star cluster, which held great significance for many ancient cultures in marking the agricultural year. This suggests the Nazca possessed a sophisticated, deep astronomical knowledge, encoding their understanding of the cosmos in the very land they inhabited. The question of how they achieved such staggering accuracy without the ability to fly is a testament to their ingenuity. They likely used simple but effective surveying techniques, perhaps employing a series of stakes and ropes to plot out the enormous figures and lines from smaller-scale models. Their mathematical precision was such that a long straight line might deviate by only a few meters over a course of several kilometers, an incredible feat of engineering and spatial reasoning. To understand the why, we must delve into the cultural and spiritual world of the Nazca. This was not a barren wasteland to them, but a sacred landscape. The alignments were likely not purely scientific. They were deeply intertwined with ritual and cosmology. The straight lines or pampas may have served as processional ways for ceremonies, with participants walking the paths to reach ceremonial mounds or other focal points. The animal figures probably represented spirits or deities, with the hummingbird, monkey, and killer whale holding specific symbolic power, possibly related to water, fertility, and the afterlife. The connection to water is perhaps the most compelling. In a desert environment where rainfall is scarce and life depends on underground aquifers and distant mountain runoff, the alignment of some lines takes on a vital, practical significance. Certain long lines point directly toward mountain peaks in the Andes, specifically to places where water would emerge during the rainy season, creating life-giving streams. In this view, the Nazca Lines become a form of geospatial prayer, a way of physically connecting their arid home to the distant, life-sustaining sources of water in the mountains. They were blending geography with cosmology, mapping not just the heavens but the very sources of their survival onto the desert floor. They were creating a ritual landscape where the celestial, the terrestrial, and the spiritual realms converged. So, what drove them to create such massive, enduring designs? It was likely a combination of necessity and devotion, a need to predict the seasons for survival, a desire to appease the gods who controlled rain and fertility, and a profound belief that their world was a direct reflection of a celestial order. The Nazca did not need to see their work from above. They were living within it, walking their sacred pathways and looking toward the horizon, their lives and rituals intimately guided by the alignments they had so carefully inscribed upon the earth. But let us now cross the Channel and journey to the wind-swept Salisbury Plain in England, where the most iconic of all megalithic monuments stands in silent, imposing grandeur. Imagine the scene: a cool, misty morning in late June, the sky just beginning to lighten in the east. A hush falls over the crowd gathered within the stone circle, all eyes fixed on the horizon. Then it happens: the first sliver of the sun breaks over the horizon, perfectly framed between the uprights of the great Sarsen trilithons, its rays shooting through the monument to strike the central altar stone. At the exact same moment, the sun's disk appears to balance directly atop the solitary heel stone that stands guard at the entrance to the earthwork enclosure. This is the summer solstice at Stonehenge, an event that has drawn people to this sacred spot for over 4,500 years, and it is a spectacle of celestial alignment executed with breathtaking precision. Constructed in several complex phases beginning around 3000 BC and continuing for over a millennium, Stonehenge is far more than a simple circle of stones. It is a sophisticated astronomical observatory, a temple, and a tomb, all rolled into one. The entire architecture of the monument is oriented around the movements of the sun. The main axis, formed by the avenue, a processional pathway leading from the monument to the river Avon, and the alignment of the heel stone, points directly to the sunrise on the summer solstice and, in the opposite direction, to the sunset on the winter solstice. This was not a casual observation. It was the central organizing principle of the entire structure. Renowned archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson and his team have developed a compelling theory that Stonehenge was part of a much larger ritual landscape dedicated to the cycles of life and death. They propose that Stonehenge itself, built of enduring stone, was a domain of the dead, linked by the avenue to the river Avon. Meanwhile, just 2 miles away, a massive settlement known as Durrington Walls, built of timber and therefore associated with the living, was aligned with the winter solstice sunset. This creates a powerful symbolic journey, a procession from the world of the living at Durrington Walls, down the river Avon, and up the avenue to the world of the ancestors at Stonehenge, timed to the most significant celestial events of the year. The construction of Stonehenge is a marvel in itself, a story of unbelievable perseverance and ingenuity. The largest Sarsen stones, weighing up to 50 tons each, were dragged over 20 miles from the Marlborough Downs. The smaller blue stones, which form the inner circle, have an even more incredible origin, quarried from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. How did Neolithic people, without the wheel or draft animals, accomplish this? Theories suggest they used a combination of sledges, rollers, and ropes, maneuvering the massive stones overland and perhaps even floating them part of the way on rafts. The precise shaping of the stones is another mystery. The giant Sarsens were expertly worked using stone hammers, their surfaces smoothed and the iconic lintels fixed in place using complex woodworking joints, mortise and tenon joints to secure the lintels on top, and tongue and groove joints to lock the lintels together in a continuous circle. This level of sophisticated stoneworking would be impressive in any age, let alone in prehistoric Britain, but the solar alignments are only half the story. Stonehenge also encodes a deep understanding of the more complex lunar cycle. Every 18.6 years, the moon reaches what is known as a major standstill, rising and setting at its most extreme northerly and southerly points on the horizon. Remarkably, the 4 station stones that form a rectangle within the monument are aligned to these lunar extremes. If you stand at one station stone, you would see the moon rise over another during a major standstill event. This long-term lunar calendar would have allowed the builders to predict eclipses, events that would have held immense and likely terrifying power for a prehistoric society. The recent discoveries using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry have revealed that Stonehenge was not an isolated monument. It was the heart of a vast ceremonial complex with hundreds of burial mounds, processional avenues, and other wooden and stone circles scattered across the landscape, many of which have their own celestial alignments. This was a sacred geography, a canvas upon which the Neolithic people projected their cosmology, mirroring the cycles of the heavens in the very layout of their world. So why did they invest such immense, generation-spanning effort in this endeavor? The sun was not just a light in the sky to them. It was a life-giving deity, a symbol of rebirth and the eternal cycle of the seasons. By building a machine that could so perfectly capture its most pivotal moments, they were attempting to harness that power to ensure the continuity of their world and to honor the ancestors who they believed resided among the celestial bodies. Stonehenge stands as a permanent testament to humanity's primal need to understand the cosmos and to find our own small yet significant place within its infinite rhythms. Now, let us travel from the open plains of England to the rugged, wind-swept coast of Brittany in northwestern France, where an even older and more extensive megalithic landscape awaits. Here, scattered across the countryside in the town of Karnak, lies one of the most astonishing and dense collections of standing stones in the entire world. Picture this, not dozens, not hundreds, but over 3,000 granite megaliths erected in long, parallel rows that stretch for miles across the heather and gorse. These are the Karnak stones, a silent, sprawling forest of stone that has guarded its secrets for more than 6,500 years, dating back to around 4,500 years before the Common Era. While Stonehenge is a concentrated circle, Karnak is a vast, linear phenomenon, and its primary cosmic connection appears to be not with the sun, but with our other celestial companion, the moon. The sheer scale and organization of the stones suggest a purpose far beyond random placement. In the mid-20th century, a pioneering engineer and archaeoastronomer named Alexander Thom conducted extensive surveys of megalithic sites across Britain and France. At Karnak, he identified something remarkable. The long, straight alignments of stones, particularly the famous Lamanic and Camario rows, are not oriented toward the sunrises or sunsets of the solstices. Instead, they point with mathematical precision toward the horizon points where the moon rises and sets at the extremes of its complex cycle. This event is known as a major lunar standstill. Unlike the sun, which has a simple yearly cycle, the moon has a much more complicated pattern. It takes approximately 18.6 years for the moon to complete a full cycle, swinging from rising at its most northeasterly point and setting at its most northwesterly, to rising at its most southeasterly and setting at its most southwesterly. At the peak of this cycle, the moon appears to stand still at these extreme points for a short period before reversing its path. The builders of Karnak, it seems, encoded this long, slow lunar dance into the very layout of their monuments. The potential uses for this knowledge were profound. For a prehistoric farming community, tracking the seasons was a matter of survival, and the moon's cycle, while more complex, offered another layer of calendrical precision. But perhaps more importantly, the ability to predict lunar extremes would have granted them the power to foresee eclipses. A lunar eclipse can only occur during a full moon when it is at or very near one of its standstill points. By carefully observing the moon's path against the fixed sightlines of the Karnak rows, these ancient astronomers could have anticipated when an eclipse was likely, transforming a terrifying celestial event, the moon turning a bloody red, from a random act of angry gods into a predictable and therefore controllable phenomenon. This would have bestowed immense social and religious power upon the individuals who held this knowledge. The site itself is not a single, uniform structure, but a fascinating variety of megalithic architecture, each element possibly serving a different function. Beyond the famous alignments, there are solitary, towering stones called menhirs, some standing over 20 feet tall. There are also dolmens, which are chamber-like structures formed by large capstones resting on upright stones, often used as collective burial tombs. And there are tumuli, or earthen mounds, covering burial chambers. This combination suggests that Karnak was a multi-purpose sacred landscape, intertwining the realms of the living and the dead with the cycles of the cosmos. The most poignant example of their lunar ambition is the Grand Menhir Brisset, or the Great Broken Menhir, located a short distance from the main alignments. This colossal stone now lies fractured into 4 massive pieces. But in its prime, it was a true giant, estimated to have stood over 65 feet tall and weighing close to 350 tons. It was the largest single standing stone ever erected in Europe. Researchers believe that before it fell, this monumental menhir acted as a distant foresight, a central back site for observing the moon. When viewed from specific points within the alignments, the Grand Menhir would have framed the rising moon during a major standstill, its immense silhouette perfectly capturing the lunar disk as it peaked over the horizon. Its fall, whether from an earthquake, lightning strike, or deliberate toppling, marks the end of an era, but its original purpose speaks volumes about the astronomical sophistication of its builders. How did a society without writing, without metal tools, develop such a detailed and long-term understanding of lunar patterns? The answer likely lies in generations of patient, meticulous observation. Knowledge was passed down orally, with each generation adding to the collective understanding of the sky. The stones themselves acted as a permanent record, an unchangeable calendar etched into the landscape that could be used and refined over centuries. They were not just an observatory, they were a university of stone, teaching the rhythm of the heavens to all who knew how to read its alignments. The puzzle of Karnak underscores a universal human truth we are seeing again and again. From the deserts of Peru to the coasts of France, ancient peoples looked to the sky not just for practical guidance, but to find meaning and order in their world. Their lunar focus reminds us that the night sky, with its mysterious, changing moon, held just as much sway over the human imagination as the brilliant, life-giving sun. Descend now from the open-air lunar observatories of Karnak and journey deep beneath the earth to the Mediterranean island of Malta, where one of the most intimate and spiritually charged alignments awaits. Picture yourself standing in the profound silence of the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, an astonishing underground labyrinth carved entirely from solid limestone. This is not a natural cave system. It is a colossal, multi-level temple complex built entirely by human hands, a subterranean world of chambers, halls, and corridors that descends 3 stories into the bedrock. For most of the year, this sacred space is enveloped in a deep, eternal darkness, its intricate red ochre spirals painted on the walls visible only by the flickering light of a torch. But for a brief, magical period around the spring and autumn equinoxes, something extraordinary happens. As the sun crests the horizon at dawn, a single, narrow beam of sunlight finds its way through a carefully oriented opening. It pierces the darkness, traveling deep into the heart of the hypogeum, and for a few precious minutes, it illuminates a specific carved spiral decoration on a wall of what is known as the Holy of Holies. In that sudden, dramatic burst of light, a symbol representing the cycle of life, death, and rebirth is momentarily brought into brilliant focus before the chamber sinks back into shadow for another 6 months. This is not an accident. It is a feat of engineering and astronomical intent that is almost beyond belief, created by the temple culture of Malta around 5,600 years ago, making it centuries older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The hypogeum is just the most dramatic example of a phenomenon found across the Maltese Islands. Above ground, the massive megalithic temples like above Gantaja on the island of Gozo and the Mnajdra complex on the southern coast of Malta itself are also masterfully aligned to these pivotal celestial moments. These are among the oldest free-standing stone structures in the entire world, and their architecture reveals a culture that was profoundly in tune with the rhythms of the cosmos. Archaeologists like David Trump have meticulously studied these sites, noting the incredible sophistication of their construction. The temples are built with apses or curved chambers arranged in a cloverleaf pattern. The exteriors are formed by massive, finely fitted stone blocks, some weighing many tons, while the interiors feature exquisite stonework, including altars, libation holes, and oracle rooms. But the true genius lies in their orientation. The southern temple at Mnajdra provides the most stunning visual demonstration. Its main doorway is a masterpiece of precision. On the equinoxes, the first rays of the rising sun pass directly through this entrance, projecting a perfect rectangle of light that travels across the central corridor and illuminates a large stone slab in the innermost apse. It functions like a colossal calendar, marking the days when day and night are of equal length, the moment of perfect balance in the solar year. This event would have signaled a time of transition, likely linked to the sowing of crops in the autumn and the harvest in the spring, making the temple an essential tool for a society dependent on agriculture. The spiritual beliefs that motivated such precise construction are deeply woven into what we can glean from their art and artifacts. The Maltese temple culture revered a corpulent, often sleeping, female figure we now call the Earth Mother or the Fat Lady. Hundreds of these statuettes have been found in the temples, suggesting a widespread cult focused on fertility, abundance, and the regenerative power of the earth. The equinox, as a time of balance and renewal, would have been the perfect moment to conduct ceremonies in her honor, to pray for fertile fields and successful harvests. The spiral motifs, so common in their art and so dramatically highlighted in the hypogeum, are believed to symbolize this endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth, the same cycle embodied by the seasons that their temples so accurately track. The engineering required to achieve these alignments is staggering to contemplate. We are talking about a people who had no metal tools, no written language, and no wheels. They quarried these enormous blocks of globigerina and coralline limestone using only stone mauls and wooden wedges. They transported them across rough terrain, likely on rollers made from tree trunks. And then, with an almost supernatural foresight, they positioned and erected them in such a way that their doorways and corridors would capture a specific sliver of sunlight on just 2 days of the year, for generations untold. This implies not only advanced knowledge of astronomy, but also a sophisticated tradition of architectural planning and a deeply ingrained communal purpose that persisted for centuries. When we place the temples of Malta in a wider context, their significance grows even larger. They are not an isolated phenomenon. They are part of a broader megalithic tradition that was spreading across Neolithic Europe, from the tombs of Portugal to the circles of Britain. While each culture had its own unique expressions, the shared preoccupation with aligning structures to solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles suggests a web of shared knowledge or a parallel development of ideas. The people of Malta may have been isolated on their small islands, but their minds were connected to the same cosmic questions that preoccupied their contemporaries across the continent. They looked to the sky, saw its order, and sought to replicate that divine order on earth, building stone calendars that tied their spiritual lives directly to the inexorable turning of the heavens. From the sun-drenched temples of the Mediterranean, we now voyage thousands of miles across the vast, open Pacific to one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth, Rapa Nui, or Easter Island. Here, a completely different kind of mystery stares back at us from the landscape. Picture this remote volcanic island, a tiny speck of land in an immense ocean, where nearly 900 massive stone figures, the Moai, stand in silent, brooding sentinel. With their elongated faces, heavy brows, and long ears, these statues are iconic, but their most famous feature is also a source of common misunderstanding. While many believe the Moai gaze out to sea, the vast majority actually face inland, watching over the communities that built them. Their backs are to the ocean, as if to guard the people from the unknown vastness beyond the shore. But to understand their true connection to the cosmos, we must look not at the statues themselves, but at the platforms upon which they stand, the ahu. These ahu are not mere foundations. They are elaborate, often vaulted, ceremonial structures that also served as burial tombs, and it is the precise orientation of these long, stone platforms that reveals a sophisticated astronomical tradition. Researchers like Georgia Lee have documented how many of these ahu are carefully aligned with the rising or setting positions of important celestial bodies, particularly the Pleiades star cluster. To the Rapa Nui people, this cluster, known as Matariki in many Polynesian cultures, was not just a random collection of stars. Its heliacal rising, its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, signaled the start of the new year, a time of immense cultural significance tied to fertility, remembrance of ancestors, and the preparation of the land for planting. By aligning their most sacred structures with this celestial event, the Rapa Nui were weaving the rhythm of the heavens directly into the ceremonial and agricultural heartbeat of their society. The most striking example of this intentional celestial architecture is found at Ahu Akivi. This is a unique and powerful site. Unlike the coastal Ahu with statues facing inland, Ahu Akivi is located further inland, and its 7 nearly identical moai face toward the sea, gazing directly at the ocean. According to Rapa Nui oral tradition, these 7 statues represent the 7 legendary explorers who, sent by the founding Polynesian king Hatu Matua, discovered the island after a long and perilous voyage. Even more remarkably, the platform of Ahu Akivi is perfectly oriented so that during the evening of the equinox, the setting sun sinks directly behind the backs of the statues, framing them in a spectacular silhouette. This alignment is too precise to be coincidental. It suggests that the statues were positioned not only to honor these ancestral explorers, but also to mark a moment of celestial balance, connecting their epic journey of discovery to the fundamental equilibrium of the sun's path. The very existence of these monuments is a testament to a breathtaking feat of engineering and social organization. The question of how the Rapa Nui transported and erected the moai has fascinated the world for centuries. The largest moai ever erected, named Paro, stood over 30 feet tall and weighed a staggering 82 tons. They were quarried from the volcanic tuff of the Rono Raraku crater. The prevailing theory, supported by experimental archaeology, suggests that the statues were walked upright to their who sites many miles away. Using a system of ropes, teams of workers would rock the statue from side to side, edging it forward with each tilt in a slow, controlled, and incredibly dangerous procession that required immense coordination and skill. This method, passed down through oral history, turns the creation of the moai from a mere act of construction into a powerful ritual of communal effort. This celestial and cultural system, however, was not static. over time, the focus of Rapa Nui society appears to have shifted from the ancestor-oriented Moai cult to a new, vital ritual known as the Birdman cult, or Tangata Manu. This competition, centered on the sacred site of Orongo, involved a perilous race to retrieve the first sooty-tern egg of the season from the offshore islet of Matu Nui. The winner's clan would then wield significant political and spiritual authority for the coming year. While different from the Moai tradition, the Birdman cult was also deeply intertwined with astronomy. The timing of the competition was linked to the arrival of the birds, which itself was connected to seasonal cycles observed in the stars. Petroglyphs at Orongo depict the Birdman figure alongside celestial symbols, showing that even as their society transformed, their world remained firmly anchored in the patterns of the sky. This remarkable civilization, with its profound astronomical and architectural achievements, eventually faced a profound crisis. The prevailing narrative tells a cautionary tale of ecological collapse. The island was once covered in a lush palm forest, but centuries of clearing land for agriculture and using trees for rollers, ropes, and canoes, coupled with the arrival of invasive rats, led to catastrophic deforestation. Without trees, the soil eroded, making farming difficult. Without large trees, they could no longer build the sophisticated ocean-going canoes necessary for deep-sea fishing and trade, cutting them off from a vital food source and cultural exchange. This environmental pressure, combined with possible internal conflict over dwindling resources, is believed to have led to a societal collapse, a period where Moai were toppled from their ahu in internecine warfare. The story of Rapa Nui is often held up as a prime example of a society that failed to live sustainably. However, more recent archaeological interpretations add nuance, suggesting the population may have been more resilient and adaptive than previously thought, finding new ways to survive in a damaged environment. Regardless of the exact cause, the outcome was a dramatic cultural shift. The knowledge and resources required to carve, transport, and erect the Great Moai were lost. The precise astronomical alignments encoded in the ahu may have been forgotten or taken on new, different meanings. The silent, toppled Moai scattered across the landscape stand as a poignant monument not to failure, but to the incredible heights of human achievement and the fragility of even the most sophisticated societies. Their story is one of both triumph and tragedy, showing us the power of human ingenuity to create wonders in the most isolated of circumstances, and the sobering reality of what can happen when that delicate balance with the environment is broken. Cross the Atlantic now to the heart of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, where a different kind of solar spectacle unfolds, one that breathes life into stone. Twice a year during the spring and autumn equinox, the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza becomes the stage for a breathtaking celestial drama. As the setting sun casts its rays across the northwest corner of the step pyramid, a play of light and shadow begins. 7 isosceles triangles of light form down the northern staircase, connecting at the bottom to the massive stone serpent heads that flank the base. The result is the unmistakable, undulating body of a giant serpent, a diamond-backed rattlesnake appearing to slither down from the heavens to earth. This is the descent of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, a phenomenon that draws tens of thousands of pilgrims and tourists to witness this ancient miracle of light, a testament to the Maya's profound fusion of astronomy, architecture, and faith. Constructed over centuries, with its main phase of development between 600 and 900 years after the Common Era, the pyramid, also known as El Castillo, is far more than a temple. It is a meticulously engineered cosmic clock and a physical manifestation of the Maya calendar. The pyramid's design is a masterpiece of mathematical symbolism. Each of its 4 sides has 91 steps. When you add them all together and include the final step up to the top platform, you arrive at 365, 1 step for each day of the solar year. This was not merely decorative, it was a permanent stone almanac for a civilization that lived and breathed by the cycles of time. The precision of the equinox alignment required an astonishingly deep understanding of solar movement and architectural geometry. The angle of the staircase, the profile of the pyramid's corners, and the placement of the serpent heads all had to be calculated perfectly to create the serpentine illusion for only a brief window on 2 specific days. Anthropologist and astronomer Anthony Aveni, a pioneer in the field of archaeoastronomy, has been instrumental in decoding these alignments, revealing how the Maya engineers oriented the pyramid to capture the equinox light with such spectacular effect. To understand why this was so important, we must delve into the cultural heart of Mesoamerican belief. The serpent was not a symbol of evil, but one of profound power and renewal. Kukulkan, known as Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs, was the feathered serpent deity who brought knowledge, civilization, and the calendar to humanity. He was a god of wind, wisdom, and life itself. His descent down the pyramid during the equinox symbolized his return to the earthly realm, bringing with him the fertilizing rains that would ensure a successful growing season. The equinox itself, a moment of perfect balance between day and night, was seen as a time of cosmic harmony, a pivotal juncture when the veil between the spiritual and physical worlds was thin. The pyramid's alignment was a way to harness this sacred energy, to participate directly in the cosmic order and ensure the continued cycle of life. But the pyramid's wonders are not limited to the visual. Stand at the base of the grand staircase and clap your hands once. Instead of a simple echo, you will hear a sharp, chirping sound that eerily mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird, the very creature whose feathers adorn the stone serpent. This remarkable acoustic phenomenon is another deliberate feature of the pyramid's design, likely achieved by the sound waves bouncing off the steep steps at specific angles. It is a stunning example of how the Maya integrated multiple sensory experiences into their sacred architecture, making the presence of the god audible as well as visible. Chichen Itza was a vast, thriving city, and the Pyramid of Kukulkan was the ceremonial centerpiece of a much larger astronomical complex. Just a short walk away stands the Caracol, a unique round tower whose name means snail in Spanish, a reference to its spiral interior staircase. The Caracol is widely considered one of the most advanced observatories in the ancient world. Its narrow, slit-like windows are precisely aligned with the extreme setting points of Venus on the horizon. For the Maya, Venus was not a benign planet. It was a deity known as Noek, the great star, and its cycles were intricately tied to war and fertility. The Maya meticulously tracked its 225-day synodic period, believing its reappearance as the morning star could portend the fortune of rulers and the outcomes of battles. The fact that the Pyramid of Kukulkan also incorporates alignments to Venus demonstrates how the entire city was planned as an integrated celestial map, where different structures worked in concert to track multiple heavenly bodies and their associated gods. This incredible investment in celestial architecture was the bedrock of Maya society. It was not a hobby for an elite few. It was central to their governance, agriculture, religion, and identity. The ability to predict solar and planetary cycles gave the priest-astronomer class immense authority. They could tell the people exactly when to plant their crops, when to expect the rains, and when to conduct the most powerful rituals to appease the gods. This knowledge provided stability, order, and a sense of meaning, legitimizing the rule of kings who claimed a direct connection to the cosmos. The grand scale of Chichen Itza, with its ball court, its temple of the warriors, and its sacred cenote or sinkhole, all oriented with astronomical principles, shows a society that channeled its collective wealth and labor into building a mirror of heaven on earth. They were not just observing the stars, they were living within a cosmology where the celestial and the terrestrial were one and the same, and their architecture was the ultimate expression of that sacred unity. Leaving the dense jungles and stone pyramids of Mesoamerica behind, we now ascend high into the thin, crisp air of the Andes, to a place where the very concept of a sacred pathway takes on a monumental, almost incomprehensible scale. Imagine the vast, wind-swept expanse of the Bolivian Altiplano, a high-altitude plain stretching between towering mountain ranges where the sky feels immense and the earth seems to stretch on forever. Here, etched not into dark desert pavement like in Nazca, but into the lighter, grassy terrain, is a web of straight lines so vast and complex it dwarfs all other known geoglyphs on the planet. These are the Sajama Lines, an astonishing network of thousands upon thousands of perfectly straight paths, some radiating out from sacred mountain peaks like spokes from a celestial hub, others running parallel for staggering distances across the open plain. Created over centuries by indigenous Aymara cultures long before the Inca Empire rose to power, these lines form a landscape art so enormous, covering an area of approximately 22,000 square kilometers, that its full pattern can only be grasped from the air, a perspective its creators never had. While they share a superficial resemblance to the Nazca Lines, their purpose and their profound integration with the surrounding geography reveal a uniquely Andean worldview, one where the earth itself was a living, breathing deity. Anthropologist and explorer Johann Reinhard, who has spent decades studying high-altitude sacred sites throughout the Andes, argues that these lines were far more than simple paths. They were physical manifestations of a spiritual geography, sacred pathways known as sects that connected communities to holy places, particularly the majestic, snow-capped mountain peaks they revered as powerful gods or apus. The Nevado Sajama, the tallest mountain in Bolivia, stands as the central focal point for many of these radiating lines. In the Andean cosmos, mountains were not inanimate piles of rock and ice. They were living, conscious beings, the source of life-giving water, the controllers of weather, and the protectors of the people. The lines leading toward their summits were likely pilgrimage routes, walked by priests and community members during specific ceremonies to make offerings of coca leaves, llama fetuses, and precious goods, pleading for the Apu's blessing. The act of walking these straight paths was itself a ritual, a moving meditation that physically and spiritually connected the human realm with the divine power of the mountain. The sheer logistical achievement of creating these lines in such a harsh environment is a testament to the determination and skill of their builders. The Altiplano is a challenging place with intense ultraviolet radiation, biting winds, and dramatic temperature swings between day and night. To create the lines, people patiently and persistently cleared the dark, oxidized surface stones and vegetation from the paths, exposing the lighter, sandy soil beneath. This created a stark visual contrast that made the lines visible for miles across the rolling landscape. Unlike the figurative animal shapes of Nazca, the Sajama lines are almost entirely geometric, long, straight, and purposeful. Maintaining their arrow-straight trajectories over such vast distances across hills and valleys required a sophisticated understanding of surveying. They likely used a series of sighting poles, aligning them with distant mountain peaks or other prominent landmarks to ensure their paths did not waver. This was not haphazard trailblazing. It was a deliberate, large-scale engineering project that organized the entire landscape according to a sacred blueprint. This blueprint was not only horizontal, connecting points on a map, but also vertical, reaching up into the heavens. Many of the Sajama lines possess a dual alignment, connecting earthly sacred sites with celestial events. Researchers have documented that certain key lines are oriented toward the rising or setting point of the sun during the June solstice, which in the southern hemisphere marks the winter solstice and the start of a new agricultural year. This was a moment of critical importance. The solstice sunrise, viewed from the end of one of these long lines, would have served as a powerful, unmissable signal that the time had come to prepare the soil, to celebrate festivals, and to conduct specific rituals aimed at ensuring a bountiful harvest. The lines functioned as a gigantic, open-air calendar, their alignments ensuring that the cyclical rhythm of the cosmos was faithfully mirrored in the seasonal activities of the community. This deep connection between astronomy, geography, and spirituality is the true heart of the Sajama lines. They represent a worldview where there was no separation between the physical and the spiritual, between the practical and the sacred. A line pointing to a mountain was not just a direction, it was a conduit to a god. A line aligned with the solstice sun was not just a calendar, it was a channel for cosmic energy. The entire network was a means of tying the community to the sources of life itself, the water that flowed from the mountain glaciers, and the sun that governed the growing seasons. In this cosmology, the people were not separate from their environment. They were an integral part of a living, pulsating universe, and the lines were the veins through which the sacred energy of that universe flowed. The secrets these paths hold are not about lost treasure or alien visitors. They are about a profound way of seeing the world, one that understood the interconnectedness of all things. The enduring mystery of the Sajama lines lies in their silent testimony to a culture that mapped its beliefs directly onto the earth, creating a sacred geography so vast it still defies our full comprehension, urging us to consider a world where every mountain is alive and every path leads to the divine. Now, let us journey from the high Andes to the sun-drenched eastern coast of India, where an architectural marvel rises from the earth not as a pyramid or a stone circle, but as a colossal, petrified chariot, forever capturing the daily voyage of the sun god across the heavens. Behold the Sun Temple of Konark, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most audacious examples of sacred architecture ever conceived. Constructed in the 13th century of the Common Era by King Narasimhadeva I of the Eastern Ganga dynasty, the temple was designed in the unmistakable form of a gigantic chariot dedicated to Surya, the solar deity. The entire structure rests upon 24 exquisitely carved stone wheels, each about 12 feet in diameter, and is pulled by a team of 7 mighty stone horses, forever straining forward in a dynamic, frozen procession. But this is not merely decorative symbolism. It is a functioning cosmic clock of breathtaking complexity. The temple's primary axis is oriented along an east-west direction with such precision that during the dawn of specific sacred days, such as the festival of Magha Saptami, the first rays of the rising sun would stream directly through the temple's main entrance, the Jagamohana, and travel deep into the sanctum to illuminate the central deity. This celestial alignment was a deliberate act of architectural genius, designed to physically manifest the moment when divine light touched the earthly realm, blessing the king, the kingdom, and all its people. The true mechanical brilliance of Konark, however, lies in its iconic wheels. Scholars of archaeoastronomy like Subhash Kak have meticulously demonstrated that these are not just wheels in a spiritual metaphor, they are sophisticated and highly accurate sundials. Each of the 24 wheels is designed with 8 elaborate spokes. The positioning of these wheels around the base of the temple platform was carefully calculated so that the shadows cast by the spokes would tell the time of day with remarkable precision. By observing which spoke's shadow fell on which part of the wheel's rim or on specific markers, a priest or an observer could determine the hour. Furthermore, the length and direction of these shadows changed with the seasons as the sun's path across the sky shifted higher or lower. This meant the wheels also functioned as a massive seasonal calendar, marking the solstices, equinoxes, and the passage of the months. This integration of timekeeping into the very fabric of the temple's design reveals a culture that saw time itself as a divine, cyclical phenomenon governed by Sirius' eternal journey. To understand the profound inspiration behind this intricate alignment, we must delve into the rich tapestry of Vedic cosmology and astrology that informed its creation. The chariot form is a direct reference to the descriptions found in ancient Sanskrit texts, where the sun god Surya is depicted as riding across the sky in a chariot drawn by 7 horses, which represent the 7 days of the week or the 7 colors of sunlight. The 24 wheels symbolize the 24 fortnights of the Hindu year, or the 24 hours of the day, embedding the entire cycle of time into the temple's structure. Every single inch of the temple's surface is covered in intricate carvings that further this cosmic narrative. The sculptures depict deities, celestial nymphs, musicians, scenes from daily life, and an entire world of symbolic imagery that maps the universe according to Vedic thought. This was not just a place of worship, it was a 3-dimensional textbook of astronomy, astrology, and philosophy, a place where a devotee could literally walk through a representation of the cosmos and understand their place within it. The temple's alignment ensured that the sun's light performed a sacred dance upon its stones, illuminating specific carvings and entering the inner sanctum only on the most auspicious days, thereby amplifying the spiritual energy of those moments and connecting human ritual directly to celestial rhythm. The story of Konark, however, is also one of poignant mystery and loss, which adds a profound layer to its grandeur. For centuries, a dominant legend held that the main temple tower, the Vimana, collapsed in the late 16th century due to the structural weakening caused by a massive lodestone that once sat at its peak. This lodestone, according to lore, was so powerful that it disrupted the magnetic field of the region and even held the entire structure's iron beams in perfect balance. While this is a captivating tale, modern historians and archaeologists point to a more gradual yet equally dramatic culprit: coastal erosion. The temple was built perilously close to the shoreline, and over the centuries, the slow but relentless encroachment of the sea, combined with the silting of the nearby river, undermined its foundations and led to the main sanctum's eventual collapse and abandonment. The sea, which once brought traders and wealth to the kingdom, ultimately conspired to reclaim this masterpiece, leaving the towering Jagamohana and the stunning wheel platform as the primary remains we see today. What does this incredible alignment and its subsequent decline tell us about the broader cultural values of medieval India? It speaks of a civilization that invested its greatest artistic, scientific, and economic resources into creating monuments that celebrated the fundamental forces of the universe. The king's commission of such a temple was an act of immense piety, a declaration that his rule was in harmony with the cosmic order. The alignment was a public demonstration of this harmony, a yearly reaffirmation of the divine sanction of his kingship and the prosperity of his realm. The temple was a nexus where science and spirituality were not separate disciplines, but 2 sides of the same sacred coin. The builders of Konark possessed a sophisticated knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and engineering, which they seamlessly wove into a profound spiritual vision. They saw the sun not as a distant ball of gas, but as a conscious, benevolent deity whose light was the source of all life, time, and knowledge. By building a stone chariot to capture that light in such a precise and beautiful way, they created a permanent bridge between the human and the divine, a testament to a culture that looked at the heavens and sought to build its most magnificent dreams here on earth. Now, let us venture into the heart of the Jordanian desert, to a city carved not from stone, but directly into the living rock itself. As you emerge from the narrow, winding fissure of the Sick Canyon, the first sight to greet you is the breathtaking facade of the Treasury, or Al-Kosneh, its rose-red cliffs glowing with an almost supernatural light in the early morning. But imagine witnessing this spectacle on the dawn of the winter solstice, when the low-angled sun crests the eastern mountains and sends a single, powerful beam of light directly through the main doorway, illuminating the inner chamber in a dramatic burst of gold. This is not a random act of nature. It is a carefully engineered celestial event, a phenomenon that scholars like archaeologist David F. Graff believe was a deliberate act by the Nabateans, a nomadic people who built their magnificent capital, Petra, between roughly 100 years before the Common Era and 100 years after. For a culture that rose to immense wealth and power by controlling the lucrative trade routes of incense, spices, and silk, this solstice alignment was far more than a pretty light show. It was likely a profound symbol of renewal and divine favor, a moment when the sun god Dashara, or perhaps the powerful goddess Al-Azhar, was believed to be physically present within the temple tomb, her power manifested in the sunlight that may have been designed to strike specific carvings or altars within the shadowy interior. This architectural precision reveals a fascinating duality at the core of the Nabatean identity. Here was a society famed for its ruthless practicality and mercantile genius, yet they invested incredible effort into aligning their most iconic structure with the cosmos. Their legendary expertise in water management is a perfect example of this blend. In a hyper-arid environment that receives only about 6 inches of rain per year, the Nabateans engineered an intricate and extensive system of dams, cisterns, and channels that captured every precious drop of seasonal rainwater, allowing Petra to support a population of perhaps 30,000 people and countless caravan animals. They literally made the desert bloom to support their trade empire. This mastery over their environment makes their celestial alignments all the more significant. The winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, marks the symbolic death and rebirth of the sun. In an agricultural sense, even for a trading power, it signaled the hope for the returning rains and the renewal of life in the coming months. By designing the treasury to capture the first light of this pivotal day, the Nabateans were performing a form of architectural magic, harnessing the power of the sun to ensure not just spiritual renewal, but also the continued flow of water and wealth that their civilization depended upon. This fusion of the practical and the spiritual extended to their very livelihood. The Nabateans were the ultimate masters of desert logistics, guiding immense caravans of camels loaded with goods from southern Arabia to the markets of Gaza, Damascus, and beyond. Their success relied on an intimate knowledge of the desert, and this is where astronomy served a brutally practical purpose. While the treasury aligns with the sun, many other rock-cut tombs and high places throughout Petra's vast necropolis show orientations toward specific star clusters. The clear, unpolluted night sky of the desert was their map. Constellations like the Pleiades or the bright star Sirius would have served as critical navigational aids, their rising and setting times providing a reliable calendar for planning the long, perilous journeys across trackless sands. A tomb aligned with a specific star might not only honor an ancestor but also function as a permanent, fixed reference point, a celestial marker that helped guide the living on their profitable travels. This sophisticated knowledge did not develop in a vacuum. The Nabateans were cultural sponges positioned at the crossroads of empires. Through their trade, they absorbed and adapted ideas from the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, and the Mesopotamians. The very architectural style of the treasury's facade, with its Corinthian columns and Hellenistic pediments, is a direct import from the Greco-Roman world. It is highly probable that their astronomical understanding was also enriched through this constant cultural exchange. They may have learned about solar cycles from the Egyptians or celestial navigation from the Babylonians, then refined and applied this knowledge in their own uniquely Nabatean way, carving it into the cliffs of their hidden city. So, why would a culture of nomadic traders, so focused on commerce and survival, prioritize such precise and labor-intensive alignments? The answer lies in a worldview that saw no contradiction between profit and piety. For the Nabateans, the celestial and the commercial were two sides of the same coin. The gods controlled the rains that filled their cisterns, the stars that guided their caravans, and the political stability that allowed their trade to flourish. By building a city that was both a supremely functional hub and a sacred landscape aligned with the heavens, they were seeking to maintain a cosmic balance. They were ensuring that the same divine order that governed the movements of the sun and stars would also govern the safe passage of their goods and the continued prosperity of their people. The treasury's solstice light was a yearly reaffirmation of this sacred contract, a moment when the desert sun illuminated the incredible achievement of a people who carved an empire and their faith directly into the face of eternity. But now, we must turn our attention to a site so controversial that it threatens to rewrite the entire timeline of human history. Deep within the Mpumalanga region of South Africa, nestled within a landscape of rolling hills and dense vegetation, lies a peculiar arrangement of dolerite stones that has become the center of a fiery academic and philosophical debate. This is the place known as Adam's Calendar, a name that evokes its proposed function as one of the world's oldest, if not the oldest, human-made calendar. When you first lay eyes on it, it may appear as little more than a scattered ring of large, weathered rocks, but look closer and a pattern begins to emerge. A central monolith, now fallen, once stood aligned with other strategically placed stones, and it is the interaction of these stones with the sun that reveals the site's potential genius. During the solstices and equinoxes, the standing stones cast distinct, elongated shadows that fall directly upon specific marker stones within the circle, functioning with the precision of a crude yet effective sundial. This alone would be a remarkable discovery, suggesting a Neolithic society with a sophisticated understanding of the solar cycle. However, the claims made by its most prominent proponent, author and researcher Michael Tellinger, are far more revolutionary. Tellinger, who has popularized the site, proposes that Adam's calendar is not just a solar calendar, but a full-blown stellar observatory. He and his colleagues argue that the layout of the central stones perfectly mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt, the same celestial configuration we saw mirrored on the Giza plateau thousands of miles and allegedly tens of thousands of years away. Even more astonishingly, they suggest that other stones within the circle align with the rising point of Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. If these alignments are indeed intentional, they point to an astronomical knowledge that is profoundly advanced. The most earth-shattering claim, however, is its proposed age. Through a combination of geological assessments and controversial interpretations of star precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that changes our view of the constellations over millennia. Tellinger and his supporters date the site to over 75,000 years old. This is a number that sends shockwaves through conventional archaeology, which tells us that at that time, modern humans were just beginning their great migration out of Africa, and complex, monumental architecture was supposedly tens of thousands of years in the future. This timeline suggests the existence of a sophisticated, organized society in deep prehistory, a veritable lost civilization that possessed knowledge we thought impossible for its time. Unsurprisingly, these radical claims have been met with intense skepticism from the mainstream archaeological community. Many geologists and archaeologists who have examined the site argue that the stone circle is a natural formation. They point to the region's geology, where dolerite stones are common and often fracture into rectangular blocks, creating formations that can appear artificially arranged. They suggest that what we are seeing is a classic case of pareidolia, the human tendency to see meaningful patterns, especially familiar shapes like circles, in random natural features. Critics also propose that if there is any human modification at all, it is likely much more recent, perhaps the work of Iron Age pastoralists a mere few hundred or thousand years ago, and that its alignment with celestial bodies is simply a fortunate coincidence. The site itself is geologically fascinating. The stones are composed of dolerite, a hard, igneous rock that is resistant to erosion, which contributes to their enduring presence. Some of the stones show what appear to be tool marks and precise, circular holes that proponents argue are evidence of ancient drilling techniques. The entire circle is situated on a steep slope, which would have required significant effort to level and prepare, suggesting intentional modification of the landscape. This has led researchers to look for connections to other, more accepted African ruins. Could the builders of Adam's calendar be the distant ancestors of the later civilization that constructed the magnificent stone city of Great Zimbabwe, over 1,000 miles to the north? The sheer scale of stonework at Great Zimbabwe demonstrates a long and sophisticated tradition of megalithic construction in southern Africa. While there is no direct archaeological link, the idea posits a continuous thread of advanced knowledge running through the continent's deep history, a narrative that challenges the traditional, Eurocentric focus of historical inquiry. This site inevitably pulls us into the realm of alternative history and local legend. The area surrounding Adam's calendar is rich with oral traditions that speak of a time when gods or people from the stars came to Earth and imparted wisdom to humanity. These stories, passed down through generations, tell of a great civilization that existed before a cataclysmic event reshaped the world. For those who believe Adam's calendar is genuine, these are not mere myths. They are cultural memories, fragmented echoes of a real, advanced society that once thrived there. The debate over this enigmatic stone circle is about much more than just dating rocks. It strikes at the very heart of who we are and where we come from. The conventional narrative of human progress is a slow, linear climb from primitivism to civilization. Sites like Adam's calendar, if validated, would shatter that narrative, suggesting that the path of human history is not a straight line but perhaps a circle, or even a series of peaks and troughs, with advanced cultures rising and falling long before our recorded history began. It forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question: what if we are not the first? What if an entire epoch of human innovation, of astronomical discovery and architectural achievement, has been completely lost to time, buried beneath the dust of millennia, leaving behind only a cryptic circle of stones on a South African hillside as its sole, silent witness? This profound enigma pushes the very boundaries of archaeology and invites us to consider a past far more mysterious and magnificent than we ever imagined. As we move from the broken monoliths of South Africa, our journey takes us across the planet to the lush, green islands of Aotearoa, New Zealand. where the connection between the earth and the sky is woven into the very fabric of community life. Here, the Maori Mari stands as the beating heart of social, cultural, and spiritual identity. Picture a central open courtyard, the Mari Atia, flanked by a magnificently carved meeting house, the Rapa Nui, whose soaring apex represents a revered ancestor. This is not merely a collection of buildings, it is a living embodiment of a worldview, a sacred space where the architecture itself is oriented to the heavens. Many of these Mari, established from the 13th century of the Common Era onwards, are precisely aligned with the most iconic constellation in the Southern Hemisphere, the Southern Cross, or Te Punga as it is known in Te Reo Maori. To the Maori, this was not just a random pattern of stars, it was the anchor stone of their celestial canoe, a fixed point of profound navigational and spiritual significance that held the sky in place. This stellar alignment was part of a much broader and more intricate celestial tapestry that guided every aspect of existence. The heliacal rising of the Pleiades star cluster, known as Matariki, was a moment of immense importance, signaling the beginning of the Maori New Year. Its appearance in the pre-dawn sky in late May or early June was not just an astronomical event. It was a cultural signal, a time for remembrance, for feasting, for planting new crops, and for planning the future. As Maori astronomer Dr. Rangi Matamua has passionately articulated, this knowledge was not confined to a priestly class. It was woven into the daily life of the people, embedded in songs, proverbs, and the stories told by elders, ensuring that everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest chief, understood their place within the cosmos. The practical application of this knowledge, however, reaches its most breathtaking expression in the epic story of Polynesian voyaging. Consider the sheer scale of their achievement. The Pacific Ocean is the largest single feature on our planet, a vast, empty expanse of water covering nearly 1/3 of the Earth's surface. Within this immense blue desert, the Polynesians, the ancestors of the Maori, performed what can only be described as the most ambitious exploration and migration in human history. They discovered and settled thousands of islands, from Hawaii to Rapa Nui to Aotearoa, navigating across thousands of miles of open ocean without compasses, without sextants, without any of the instruments we associate with exploration. Their instrument was the world itself. They were master wayfinders, reading a complex symphony of natural signs. They watched the patterns of ocean swells, feeling how their canoes rocked and rolled as different wave systems reflected off distant, unseen islands. They observed the flight paths of birds, knowing that certain species would fly out to sea to fish in the morning and return to land at night. They tasted the salinity of the water and smelled the air for the scent of land blossoms carried on the wind. But above all, they navigated by the stars. The night sky was their chart. They memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars, creating a mental star compass that divided the horizon into precise sectors. The Southern Cross, due to its position near the south celestial pole, was a crucial directional marker, but it was not used in isolation. They knew that when the Southern Cross stood upright in the sky, it pointed due south. They used a technique called star pathing, sailing toward a star that was known to rise or set over their destination island. As that star moved too high in the sky or dipped below the horizon, they would then pivot to the next guiding star in the sequence, effectively following a celestial highway across the ocean. This was a dynamic, living form of navigation that required an incredible memory, intense observation, and a deep, intuitive understanding of the motion of the heavens. The construction of the Mari itself reflects this profound connection. The meeting house, or Rapa Nui, is more than a building, it is an ancestor. The great central ridgepole represents the backbone, the exposed rafters are the ribs, and the face of the ancestor gazes out from the front. The materials were sourced directly from the land: huge totara logs for the carvings and structure, flax for the woven wall panels, and river stones for the foundations. The orientation of the Maori, with its entrance often facing the rising of a specific star or constellation, was a deliberate act of cosmic alignment. It physically connected the community to their ancestors, who were believed to have ascended to the heavens after death and taken their place among the stars. To enter the Maori through a doorway aligned with a particular star was to literally walk in the path of one's forebears, reinforcing the unbreakable bond between the living, the dead, and the cosmos. This celestial knowledge was the primary mechanism for preserving history and genealogy, their wakapopa. The stars were a library in the sky. The names of stars and constellations were often the names of ancestors, heroes, or events from their mythology. By reciting the stars, they were reciting their history. The story of the great hero Maui fishing up the North Island of New Zealand from the sea, for example, is encoded in the stars. This oral tradition, passed down through countless generations with meticulous accuracy, was how they maintained their identity across the vastness of the Pacific and through the centuries. In modern times, there has been a powerful and inspiring renaissance of this traditional knowledge. After a period of cultural suppression, Maori leaders, scholars, and communities have worked tirelessly to reclaim and revitalize their ancestral practices. The revival of ocean voyaging using traditional double-hulled canoes, or waka, has been at the forefront of this movement. Voyages like those of the Hokula, a replica Polynesian canoe that successfully navigated from Hawaii to Tahiti, and then on to Aotearoa in the 1970s and 80s using only traditional wayfinding methods, proved to the world the absolute validity and sophistication of this ancient science. This was not myth, it was a demonstrable, repeatable technology of exploration. Today, the celebration of Matariki has been officially recognized as a public holiday in New Zealand, a testament to the resilience and enduring power of Maori culture. Families and communities gather to remember those who have passed, to share feasts, to tell stories, and to look to the future, their eyes turned upward to the same stars that guided their ancestors across the greatest ocean on Earth. What can we learn from this holistic Maori worldview? It offers a profound lesson in interconnectedness. In their understanding, there is no separation between science and spirituality, between navigation and genealogy, between the practical and the sacred. The sky was not a distant, cold void to be conquered. It was a relative, a guide, a map, and a calendar all at once. It was a living part of their culture, intimately woven into their identity. Their achievement stands as a monumental tribute to human ingenuity, courage, and the timeless desire to explore, reminding us that true knowledge often lies not in dominating nature, but in learning to read its subtle, beautiful, and infinitely complex language. Stepping from the sacred Maori of the Pacific into the cool, cavernous interior of Chartres Cathedral is like stepping into a different dimension of celestial reverence, one carved from stone and glass rather than wood and star lore. Here, in this masterpiece of French Gothic architecture, the connection to the cosmos is not written in the language of ocean navigation, but in the silent, profound grammar of geometry and light. Your eyes are first drawn upward to the impossible height of the vaulted ceilings and the kaleidoscopic brilliance of the stained glass windows, but then look down. There, spanning the entire width of the nave floor, lies one of the most enigmatic and beautiful features of the medieval world, the Great Labyrinth. A single, winding path of dark stone inlaid into the pale floor, it forms a complex, circular pattern over 40 feet in diameter. For centuries, pilgrims have walked this path on their knees, a physical and spiritual journey toward a center that represents Jerusalem or heaven, or a profound encounter with the divine. Yet, this labyrinth is not an isolated symbol. It is the heart of a breathtaking celestial alignment that transforms the entire cathedral into a monumental sundial on the most significant day of the solar year. The entire cathedral is precisely oriented, with its choir and high altar shifted slightly to the north, a deliberate architectural feature that ensures on the day of the summer solstice, a specific and wondrous event occurs. As the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, its light streams through the magnificent south rose window, a dazzling wheel of stained glass depicting the Last Judgment. The light does not simply flood the space, it is projected downward, its colors and patterns falling upon the stone floor, and under perfect conditions, this celestial spotlight finds its ultimate target, the center of the labyrinth. For a few precious minutes, the light of the sun, representing the light of Christ, the Lux Mundi, directly illuminates the end of the pilgrim's path. This is not a coincidence. It is a feat of architectural and astronomical genius that connects the macrocosm of the heavens directly to the microcosm of an individual's spiritual quest. The symbolism here is incredibly rich and multi-layered. In medieval Christian thought, the sun was a powerful metaphor for God, the source of all light, truth, and life. The labyrinth, on the other hand, represented the difficult, twisting, and often confusing journey of the human soul through life toward salvation. Its single path, with no dead ends, signified that while the path to God is long and arduous, it is ultimately available to all who persist. By designing the cathedral so that the solstice sun physically connects the rose window's depiction of divine judgment to the labyrinth symbol of human striving, the builders created a powerful theological statement. They were visually demonstrating that God's grace and light directly illuminate the path of the faithful, that the celestial and the terrestrial are in sacred conversation. The architectural precision required to achieve this is staggering. The cathedral we see today was built largely in a feverish 30-year period after a fire in 1194, a testament to the immense communal effort and devotion of the entire region. The master masons who designed it were not just builders, they were geometers, theologians, and astronomers. Scholars like John James have spent decades analyzing the cathedral's fabric, uncovering how its construction was governed by principles of sacred geometry, using ratios and proportions believed to reflect the divine order of the universe. The orientation of the building itself is a key part of this. It is widely believed that Chartres was built upon a much older pagan sacred site, a druidic grove dedicated to a virgin who will give birth. This was a common practice in early Christianity, a way of sanctifying and co-opting pre-existing places of power. The builders of Chartres, therefore, may have been consciously incorporating astronomical knowledge that predated their own faith, aligning their new cathedral to the same solar cycles that the Druids once venerated, baptizing a pagan understanding of the cosmos into the service of the Christian God. This alignment was not merely for show, it was integrated into the very function of the cathedral as a center of ritual and education. In a time when the vast majority of the population was illiterate, the cathedral was often called the poor man's Bible. Its sculptures, its windows, and its very layout were designed to teach the stories of Scripture and the doctrines of the faith. The Solstice Light Show was the ultimate sermon in stone and light. As the light passed through the rose window, it would not only hit the labyrinth but also illuminate specific biblical scenes and figures in the surrounding stained glass, bringing them to vivid, glowing life for the gathered worshippers. This dramatic event, timed to the longest day of the year, would have been a highlight of the liturgical calendar, a communal experience that reinforced the power of the Church and the reality of God's ordered universe. It was a form of participatory theater where the architecture itself became a mechanism for revelation, making the invisible truths of faith visible and tangible. So why would medieval Christian builders, working in an age often characterized as faith-dominated and scientifically nascent, go to such extraordinary lengths to encode celestial alignments into their greatest buildings? The answer lies in a medieval worldview that saw no conflict between science and religion. For them, the universe was a single, coherent creation of a rational God. To study the laws of the cosmos, the movement of the planets, the path of the sun was to better understand the mind of the Creator. The cathedral was meant to be a model of this universe, a microcosm of God's macrocosm. By building in harmony with the heavens, they were not practicing a hidden paganism. They were celebrating the unity of all creation and demonstrating that the God of the Bible was also the God of geometry, astronomy, and light. The alignment at Chartres is a powerful testament to the continuity of human curiosity. It shows us that the impulse to mark the solstices, to build in harmony with the cosmos, did not die with the megaliths or the pagan temples. It was simply translated into a new language, the language of Gothic architecture and Christian theology. The pilgrims walking the labyrinth were participating in the same fundamental human ritual as the Neolithic observers at Stonehenge, seeking meaning, order, and connection within the grand, beautiful, and mysterious cycles of the sky. Far to the north, on the windswept Isle of Lewis in the Scottish Outer Hebrides, a different kind of stone circle commands the landscape, one whose primary cosmic conversation partner was not the sun, but our enigmatic celestial neighbor, the moon. The Callanish Stones do not form a simple ring. They rise from the peat bog in a haunting, cross-shaped pattern, with a central monolith over 15 feet tall surrounded by a circle of 13 other stones, from which long avenues of stones radiate out to the north, south, east, and west. This complex arrangement, erected around 5,000 years ago, is not a monument to the sun's reliable daily journey, but to the moon's far more complex and mysterious dance, a dance that reaches its most dramatic peaks every 18.6 years. This is the cycle of the lunar standstills. Unlike the sun, which swings between two fixed points on the horizon for the solstices, the moon's rising and setting points migrate along the horizon in a slow, graceful swing. At the peak of its major standstill, the moon will rise at its most northeasterly point and set at its most northwesterly, climbing higher in the sky than it does for the rest of the cycle. Then, 9.3 years later, it reaches its minor standstill, rising and setting at its most southeasterly and southwesterly points, tracing a much lower path across the heavens. The genius of the Callanish Stones lies in their precise orientation to capture these extreme moments. The southern avenue of the site points directly toward the setting point of the full moon during a major standstill. If you were to stand at the end of this avenue and look back toward the circle on such a night, you would witness the moon, huge and low on the horizon, appearing to skim the tops of the distant hills before sinking from view, perfectly framed by the stone avenue. Even more dramatically, during a major standstill, the moon would appear to glide along the southern horizon, almost rolling behind the stones, and from the center of the circle, the massive central stone would cast a long, pointing shadow directly down the length of the avenue, as if the spirit of the moon itself were drawing a line in the landscape. This was not a passive observation, it was an active, interactive observatory built from stone. The potential uses for this long-term lunar knowledge were profound. For a Neolithic farming and herding community living in a challenging northern climate, tracking the seasons was a matter of life and death. the major lunar standstill, occurring less than twice in a human lifetime, would have been an event of immense social and spiritual significance. It may have been used to calibrate a long-term calendar, to mark the timing of important gatherings, or to predict eclipses, which can only occur when the sun and moon are aligned near these standstill points. The ability to foresee an eclipse, a time when the moon, a powerful deity, could seemingly be swallowed by darkness, would have bestowed unimaginable power and authority upon the individuals who held this knowledge. The site's geographical setting amplifies its mystical aura. The stones are not situated on a high hill, but in a low-lying basin, surrounded by lochs and gentle hills that create a natural amphitheater. This positioning is crucial as it uses the natural skyline as a giant astronomical instrument. The distant hills act as a calibrated backdrop, with notches and peaks serving as precise markers for the moon's extreme risings and settings. When the mist rolls in from the Atlantic, cloaking the lochs in a silvery shroud, the stones take on an otherworldly presence, standing as silent sentinels in a landscape that feels suspended between water and sky. This atmosphere is deeply woven into local folklore, which has long preserved the memory of the stone's power. Legends speak of the Shining Ones, or in some tales, a petrified people, beings of light who are turned to stone for refusing to convert to Christianity. These Shining Ones were said to walk the avenues of Callanish on certain nights, a folk memory that resonates powerfully with the idea of moonlight animating the stones, of celestial light giving life to the inanimate rock. The renowned archaeologist Aubrey Burl, a leading expert on stone circles, emphasized how this folklore is not mere superstition, but a cultural echo, a poetic interpretation of the very real, luminous phenomena that occurred there during the lunar standstills. The people may have forgotten the precise astronomical reason, but they remembered that this was a place where the heavenly and earthly realms met in a spectacular display. When we compare Callanish to its more famous contemporary, Stonehenge, we see a fascinating divergence in cosmic focus. Stonehenge is a grand, solar-centric monument, aligned to the solstices and integrated into a vast landscape of the dead. Callanish, by contrast, is intensely lunar and intimately tied to its immediate, dramatic topography. While Stonehenge feels like a formal, national temple, Callanish has the atmosphere of a local, yet profoundly powerful lunar shrine. This is not to say the builders of Callanish ignored the sun or stars. The eastern avenue aligns generally with the rising sun around the equinoxes, and the southern avenue also points toward the setting of the bright star Capella, linking the site to the celestial sphere beyond the moon. This multi-layered alignment shows a sophisticated, holistic understanding of the sky, where the moon's complex cycle was the primary, but not the only, celestial timekeeper. So what rituals might have taken place here under the glow of a standstill moon? We can imagine communities gathering from across the islands, drawn by a calendar event that occurred only once in a generation. They would have processed down the stone avenues, their footsteps echoing in the peat, their eyes fixed on the horizon. Chants, offerings, and fires may have accompanied the moon's dramatic passage, ceremonies aimed at appeasing a lunar deity, ensuring the fertility of their animals and crops, or communing with ancestors who were believed to reside in the night sky. The moon, with its cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, was a powerful symbol of regeneration, and to witness its most extreme journey at Callanish was to participate directly in that eternal cycle. This deep, lunar-focused reverence at Callanish underscores the incredible diversity of Neolithic belief and scientific pursuit, showing us that our ancestors were not monolithic in their celestial observations, but tailored their monumental architecture to the specific rhythms and spirits of their own unique landscapes. Emerging from the dense, humid Cambodian jungle at the break of day, the first rays of the spring equinox sun perform a miracle of light and stone. As dawn ignites the eastern sky, the sun crests the horizon and mounts perfectly, with breathtaking precision, the central lotus bud tower of Angkor Wat. For a few fleeting moments, the sun appears to crown the sanctuary, a celestial coronation that transforms the world's largest religious monument into a colossal, functioning sundial and a gateway between the earthly and divine realms. This is not a chance occurrence. It is the culmination of a grand cosmic vision, engineered in the 12th century by the mighty Khmer Empire under King Suryavarman II. The entire temple complex is a staggering architectural representation of the Hindu universe. The 5 iconic towers symbolize the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical axis of the world and the abode of the gods. The vast, rectangular moat surrounding the temple represents the cosmic oceans at the edge of creation. The concentric galleries depict the mountain ranges that ring Mount Meru, and the long western causeway that you cross to enter is the celestial pathway connecting our world to the realm of the divine. The equinox alignment is the ultimate expression of this symbolism. It physically demonstrates that the king, through his temple, has brought the cosmic order down to earth, aligning his kingdom with the fundamental balance of the universe at the start of the solar new year. The work of scholars like Elena Manica has been pivotal in decoding this celestial blueprint. Through painstaking measurement and analysis, she revealed how the temple's dimensions and layout are not arbitrary, but are a precise terrestrial map of time and space. The distances between certain key features correspond to chronological cycles, like the 4 great ages of Hindu cosmology. Even more remarkably, the layout of the temple's extensive moats and surrounding barrays or reservoirs appears to mirror the pattern of the Draco constellation in the northern sky, weaving the fabric of the cosmos directly into the Cambodian landscape. This was a society that saw itself as a direct reflection of the heavens, and every stone was placed to honor that sacred connection. This grand vision was made possible by one of the ancient world's most sophisticated feats of hydraulic engineering. The Khmer did not simply build a temple, they tamed a landscape. The region around Angkor is subject to a brutal monsoon cycle, with a deluge of rain for part of the year and a parching drought for the rest. To sustain a massive urban population and to stabilize the sandy, flood-prone ground enough to support immense stone structures, the Khmer engineers constructed a vast, complex network of canals, reservoirs, and moats. This system did more than just manage water. It created a reflective surface that doubled the temple's glory. The still waters of the moat perfectly mirrored the temple and the sky above, creating an inverted, celestial world below. During the equinox, this effect would have been magnified, with the rising sun appearing both above the central tower and reflected in the water below, completing the illusion that the temple was floating between 2 heavens. This hydraulic mastery was the bedrock of Khmer power, allowing them to produce surplus rice to feed a vast army of laborers, artisans, and priests, all dedicated to realizing the king's divine ambition. Over the centuries, a profound cultural and religious shift swept through the empire. While Angkor Wat was originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, the Khmer gradually embraced Theravada Buddhism. Yet, instead of abandoning the magnificent temple, they adapted it. The Buddhist faithful reinterpreted the cosmic symbolism. The central tower became not just Mount Meru, but a representation of the cosmic mountain Sumeru, and the entire complex was seen as a mandala, a geometric diagram of the universe used for meditation. The equinox alignment took on a new but equally profound meaning. It symbolized the Buddha's enlightenment and the balance of wisdom and compassion. This seamless integration of beliefs shows a remarkable cultural fluidity. where the architecture was so fundamentally powerful that its meaning could evolve without losing its essential power. The true scale of this achievement has only become fully apparent from the vantage point of space. Modern satellite technology and airborne laser scanning, known as LiDAR, have peeled back the jungle canopy to reveal that Angkor Wat was not a standalone temple, but the brilliant ceremonial heart of a sprawling, low-density megacity the size of modern Los Angeles. This vast urban grid, with its canals, roads, and smaller temples, was oriented along the same cardinal axis as Angkor Wat itself. The entire city was a single, integrated cosmic diagram, with the main ceremonial causeways acting as sight lines for celestial events. The primary western causeway, for instance, is aligned so precisely that it frames the equinox sunrise, guiding the sun's light directly into the heart of the temple for the thousands of pilgrims who would have gathered for the spectacle. This was urban planning on a divine scale, a physical manifestation of the king's claim to universal rule. So why did the Khmer Empire pour such unimaginable resources into this cosmic symbolism? The answer lies in the very nature of kingship and governance. In the Khmer world, the king was not merely a political ruler, he was a Deva Raja, a god-king. His authority was believed to be derived directly from the gods, and his primary role was to maintain the cosmic order on earth. By building a temple that so perfectly mirrored the heavens and that physically interacted with the sun on the most balanced day of the year, King Suryavarman II was providing irrefutable, visible proof of his divine mandate. He was demonstrating that his rule was in harmony with the universe itself, ensuring the fertility of the land, the regularity of the seasons, and the prosperity of his people. The equinox alignment was the ultimate piece of political theater and spiritual engineering, a yearly renewal of the sacred contract between the king, the gods, and the cosmos. This incredible fusion of astronomy, hydrology, and statecraft created one of the most awe-inspiring landscapes in human history, a place where the boundary between heaven and earth was deliberately and beautifully blurred. Now let us journey to the heart of North America, to a place that shatters the old myth of a pristine, empty continent waiting for discovery. Imagine the Mississippi River Valley around the year 1000 of the Common Era. This is not a landscape of scattered, nomadic tribes, but the bustling center of a vast, sophisticated civilization. Here, the city of Cahokia thrived, a sprawling metropolitan hub that was, at its peak, larger than London was at the same time, home to 10 to 20,000 people. Its skyline was not one of steel and glass, but of earth and timber, dominated by over 120 flat-topped earthen mounds that rose from the fertile floodplains. The greatest of these, the colossal Monk's Mound, is a 10-story tall earthen pyramid that covers more than 14 acres at its base, a public works project of almost unimaginable scale, requiring the movement of millions of baskets of earth by hand. And at the western edge of this great city, another, more subtle astronomical instrument once stood, a great circle of 48 massive cedar posts, now known as Cahokia's Woodhenge. Discovered quite by accident in the 1960s by archaeologist Warren Whittrey, who was analyzing aerial photographs of the area, this timber circle was a revelation. It proved that the Mississippian people, the master builders of Cahokia, were not just mound engineers, they were precise celestial astronomers. The circle, rebuilt several times over the centuries with slight variations, functioned as a giant solar calendar. The key to its operation was a single, central observation post positioned just outside the ring. From this vantage point, a priest or sun watcher would look across the circle toward specific perimeter posts. On the morning of the spring equinox, the sun would rise directly in line with one of these marker posts. On the summer solstice, it would align with another, and so on throughout the year. The posts cast long, telling shadows across the circle, their positions shifting day by day, providing a reliable public method for marking the passage of time and the changing of the seasons. This was not an abstract scientific pursuit, it was the very heartbeat of a complex society. The solar calendar provided by Woodhenge was the essential framework that synchronized every aspect of life in Cahokia. It told farmers precisely when to plant their crops of maize, beans, and squash, the three sisters that formed the agricultural foundation of Mississippian life. A miscalculation of just a few weeks could mean the difference between a bountiful harvest and catastrophic famine. The calendar also dictated the timing of great social and religious gatherings. We can envision the city swelling with visitors from across the region, drawn to Cahokia for ceremonies that coincided with the solstices and equinoxes. These were likely times of trade, political negotiation, games like the sacred chunky, and immense public rituals that reinforced social cohesion and the authority of the ruling elite. The entire city was laid out according to a grand, cosmologically significant plan. Cahokia's central plaza, a massive 40-acre open space, was flanked by Monk's Mound to the north and other important mounds to the east, west, and south. This arrangement created a vast, open-air ceremonial precinct known as the Ridge Pattern, which many scholars believe mirrored the Mississippian worldview, often described as a southern ceremonial complex or a cosmological quartered circle. The alignments within this sacred geography are profound. From the summit of Monk's Mound, the largest man-made earthen structure in North America, a viewer on the winter solstice would have witnessed the sun rising directly over the second largest mound, known as the Rattlesnake Mound, which was located precisely to the southeast. This alignment of the sun with the city's two most important structures at the year's lowest point would have been a powerful symbol of rebirth and the sun's promised return, reinforcing the divine connection of the city's rulers, who likely lived atop Monk's Mound. The society that orchestrated this celestial city was highly stratified, with a clear hierarchy led by a paramount chief, a class of nobles, priests, skilled artisans, and a large population of farmers and laborers. The presence of luxury goods made from materials sourced from hundreds of miles away, copper from the Great Lakes, seashells from the Gulf of Mexico, mica from the Appalachians, testifies to Cahokia's far-reaching economic and cultural influence. This was not an isolated culture, it was the center of a vast interaction sphere, and its astronomical knowledge was likely part of a shared body of understanding that spread across the Southeast and Midwest, influencing later cultures like the Chickasaw, Choctaw, and many others. The legacy of Cahokia's astronomical practices can be seen in the ethnographic records of these descendant nations, whose calendars and ceremonial cycles often retain echoes of these ancient solar observations. Yet by the 13th and 14th centuries, this great metropolis was in decline, and by the time European explorers arrived, it was long abandoned, its mounds overgrown and its story forgotten. The reasons for its collapse are complex and still debated, but they likely involve a combination of environmental and social factors. Centuries of intense farming may have depleted the soil. Deforestation for building and firewood would have caused erosion and altered local ecosystems. There is also evidence of significant flooding in the Mississippi Valley during this period, which would have devastated the agricultural base of the city. Furthermore, such a large, dense population would have been vulnerable to disease and social unrest. The very system that supported Cahokia, the centralized authority, the intensive agriculture, the grand ceremonialism, may have become unsustainable, leading people to gradually disperse into smaller, more resilient communities. The story of Cahokia and its Woodhenge is a profound chapter in the human story, one that completely redefines the history of North America. it reveals a sophisticated, urban society that mastered its environment, organized its labor on a colossal scale, and looked to the heavens to order its world. Their timber circle was more than a calendar. It was a symbol of their deep understanding of the cosmos and their place within it. It stands as a powerful reminder that long before European contact, this continent was home to civilizations of great complexity and ingenuity, whose achievements in astronomy and urban planning rivaled those found anywhere else in the ancient world. Now, let us set sail from the grand earthen pyramids of Cahokia and venture far out into the vast, blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean, to a place where the very boundary between sea and land was willfully blurred by human ambition. Imagine a labyrinth of 92 artificial islands, a floating city of basalt and coral, crisscrossed by a network of tidal canals, rising from a shallow reef off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia. This is Nan Madol, the so-called Venice of the Pacific, a place of such staggering architectural complexity that its creation seems to defy the very resources of the small, tropical island that hosted it. Built as the ceremonial and political seat of the Sordelor dynasty around the year 1200 of the Common Era, Nan Madol is not merely a collection of old ruins. It is a testament to a society that mastered its marine environment and looked to the stars as a guide for both their rituals and their survival. The true genius of Nan Madol, however, lies not just in its defiance of the ocean, but in its precise alignment with the heavens above it. Researchers like anthropologist Rufino Mauricio have documented how the main canals and the orientations of key structures, particularly the massive, walled tomb compound of Nandowas, are aligned with significant celestial bodies. The primary canal, for instance, runs along a north-south axis, while the layout of the entire complex appears to be oriented toward the rising and setting of the Southern Cross. This constellation, a crucial navigational marker for all Polynesian and Micronesian voyagers, would have held immense practical and spiritual significance. By building their sacred capital in harmony with these celestial guides, the Sordelor rulers were physically anchoring their authority to the immutable order of the cosmos, creating a terrestrial mirror of the starry pathways their ancestors had sailed. The potential uses for these alignments were deeply woven into the fabric of daily and ceremonial life. As a society utterly dependent on the sea, the cycles of marine life were a matter of survival. The rising of certain stars or star clusters would have signaled the changing seasons, the migration patterns of fish, and the spawning of specific species. A celestial alignment marking the start of a particular fishing season would have allowed the centralized authority of the Sordelors to coordinate communal fishing efforts across the island, ensuring a stable food supply for the population concentrated at Nan Madol. Beyond the practical, the stars were a bridge to the ancestors. The most sacred area of the complex, the mortuary sector, contains the monumental tomb of Nandowas, where the Sordelor rulers were laid to rest. Intriguingly, the central axis of this tomb is aligned with the rising of the Pleiades star cluster. Across the Pacific, from Hawaii to New Zealand, the Pleiades, often known as Matariki, were universally associated with the new year, with fertility, and with the spirits of the departed. By orienting the final resting place of their kings toward this cluster, the builders of Nan Madol were creating a permanent celestial staircase, linking the souls of their deceased rulers directly to the realm of the ancestors in the stars. This was more than astronomy. It was a form of state-sponsored religion, a way of legitimizing the dynasty's power by demonstrating their intimate connection to the divine cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The sheer logistical challenge of constructing Nan Madol is almost beyond comprehension and speaks volumes about the power and organization of the Sordelor dynasty. The islands are not natural, they are artificial platforms built painstakingly atop the coral reef. The primary construction material was basalt, a heavy volcanic rock. But the quarries for this basalt were not nearby. They were located on the opposite side of the main island of Pohnpei, meaning that an estimated 750,000 metric tons of stone had to be transported across the island and then out onto the reef. The basalt forms were primarily prismatic columns, massive 5-sided and 6-sided logs of stone weighing up to 50 tons each. How did they move them? The prevailing theory, supported by Pohnpeian oral history, is that they used a combination of rafts and an immense amount of human labor. Imagine fleets of bamboo rafts lashed together, loaded with these colossal stone columns, being paddled and pulled through the shallow waters, navigating the treacherous reef to reach the construction site. The labor force required for this centuries-long project must have been enormous, suggesting that the Sordelur rulers had the power to command the entire population of Pohnpei, compelling them to work on this monumental undertaking that served both as a political center and a testament to their divine right to rule. The oral histories of Pohnpei, passed down through generations, are filled with stories that speak to this period of immense centralization and also to the ultimate downfall of the Sordelurs. They tell of two sorcerer brothers, Olasipa and Olasopa, who are credited with founding Nan Madol and establishing the dynasty. Using their magical power to levitate the massive stones into place, they built the city to be close to their primary god, the god of agriculture. These stories of magic likely encode a memory of the advanced engineering and organizational skills that made the construction possible, skills that would have seemed like supernatural power to later generations. The legends also describe the increasing tyranny of the later Sordelur rulers, whose demands for tribute in the form of turtles and yams became so oppressive that they sparked a rebellion. This revolt, led by the warrior hero Isoklekel, ultimately overthrew the Sordelurs and led to the abandonment of Nan Madol as a political capital. The city's precise celestial alignments, once the heartbeat of a powerful empire, were gradually forgotten as the complex became a haunted, forbidden place, its canals silted up and its stone platforms reclaimed by the jungle and the sea. The central mystery of Nan Madol is not just how it was built, but why a society on a small island would pour such immense resources into a project of such staggering scale. The answer lies in the unique power dynamics of island civilizations. On a small landmass with limited resources, the ability to control and mobilize the entire population is the ultimate source of power. Nan Madol was a physical manifestation of that control. By building a capital that was separate from the main island, accessible only by boat, the Sordelurs created a space of exclusivity and mystery. The priesthood and the nobility lived within its walls, conducting rituals aligned with the stars, while the common people lived on the main island, supplying the labor and the food. This physical separation reinforced the social hierarchy. The celestial alignments were the ideological justification for this system. They demonstrated that the rulers were not just powerful men. They were intermediaries between the people and the gods, the ones who could read the language of the stars and ensure the fertility of the land and the abundance of the sea. Nan Madol was therefore a machine for producing and maintaining power, a stone declaration that the Sordelurs were as fundamental to the order of the world as the stars in the sky. Its eventual abandonment adds a profound layer of tragedy to its grandeur, a reminder that even the most ambitious celestial kingdoms are subject to the tides of history and the limits of human endurance. Carved into the rolling green hills of the Oxfordshire countryside in England, the Uffington White Horse is a spectacle of a different kind. Unlike the towering stones of megalithic circles or the intricate carvings of temples, This is art on a truly landscape-altering scale. A stylized galloping horse over 360 feet long, formed not by adding material, but by cutting deep trenches into the hillside and packing them with brilliant white chalk. Its form is sleek and abstract, all flowing lines and dynamic energy, more reminiscent of a creature from Celtic metalwork than a realistic animal. Dating back to the late Bronze Age or early Iron Age, around 1,000 years before the Common Era, this ancient geoglyph has maintained its vigil for an astonishing 3 millennia. While many assume such a massive figure must be a territorial marker for a tribe or a monument to a chieftain, a more celestial narrative has emerged from the work of archaeologists like David Miles, one that connects the horse's elegant form not to the sun, but to the ever-changing, mystical light of the moon. The horse is not positioned randomly on the slope. It is carefully placed on a steep escarpment, with its head and body following the natural contours of the hill. This specific placement is crucial to its potential lunar function. The unique angle of the chalk-filled trenches and the way they catch the light means that the figure is most visible, glowing with an almost supernatural intensity under the oblique rays of a low moon. During certain phases of the lunar cycle, particularly around the full moon, the entire horse can appear to shimmer, its long, sweeping back and extended legs highlighted in the silvery light. Some researchers have proposed that specific features, such as the position of the horse's eye or the curve of its back, may have been designed to align with the rising point of the full moon during key seasons, perhaps the autumn equinox or the summer solstice. In this interpretation, the white horse was not a static image, but a dynamic instrument, a colossal lunar calendar, and a focal point for rituals that ebbed and flowed with the rhythms of the night sky. The moon, for Iron Age peoples, was a powerful and enigmatic force. Its cycles governed the darkness, influenced the tides of both the ocean and, they believed, human and animal fertility. A symbol tied so visibly to the moon would have been a profound declaration of a community's connection to these deep, natural powers. The effort required to create, and just as importantly, to maintain the Uffington white horse over 3,000 years is a testament to its enduring sacred significance. The chalk trenches are not self-sustaining. Left alone, they would be quickly overgrown by grass and weeds, vanishing within a few generations. For the horse to remain visible, it had to be regularly scoured or cleaned in a communal ceremony that likely occurred every 7 years or so. This was not mere landscaping. It was an act of religious devotion, a renewal of a sacred covenant between the people and the landscape. We can imagine entire communities gathering on the hill, carefully weeding and repacking the chalk, ensuring their celestial symbol continued to shine. This generational commitment transformed the maintenance of the horse into a powerful ritual in its own right, a reenactment of creation that bound the community together and reaffirmed their identity and their place within the cosmic order. This practical necessity is woven into the rich tapestry of local legend that surrounds the site. For centuries, the hill has been known as Dragon Hill, a low, flat-topped mound situated just below the White Horse. Folklore insists that this is the very spot where St. George slew the dragon, and that the bare patch of chalk on its summit, where no grass grows, is where the dragon's poisonous blood spilled, scorching the earth forever. While this is a Christianized legend, it almost certainly overwrites a much older, pre-existing myth. The dragon, slain by a heroic figure, could easily be a folk memory of a pagan serpent or underworld deity being vanquished by a solar or celestial hero. The connection between the horse and the Dragon Hill is too potent to ignore. In many Celtic and broader Indo-European mythologies, the horse is a solar symbol, pulling the chariot of the sun across the sky. Its placement directly above the dragon could symbolize the eternal triumph of the celestial, ordering forces of light over the chaotic, chthonic forces of the earth. The moon, with its own battle against the darkness each month, fits perfectly into this symbolic drama. The Uffington White Horse is not an isolated phenomenon. It is the oldest and most famous of a whole series of chalk hill figures, or geoglyphs, that dot the landscapes of southern England, including the Cerne Abbas giant and the Westbury White Horse, though most of the others are of more recent origin. This tradition of creating massive, visible symbols in the land speaks to a deep-seated human need to imprint identity and belief upon the very earth itself. These were not hidden artworks, they were public declarations meant to be seen from a distance, to dominate the visual landscape and to communicate a powerful message to both the human community and the spiritual forces they believed inhabited the world. So, what kind of ceremonies might have taken place on this windswept hill under the gaze of the moon? We can envision processions winding their way up the ancient track known as the Ridgeway, which passes near the site. Fires may have been lit, their flames a terrestrial echo of the moon's cool light. Offerings of metalwork, pottery, or perhaps even animals could have been made to the spirit of the horse or the lunar deity it represented. The rituals might have been focused on ensuring fertility for the flocks and herds, on marking the passage of time, on initiating young people into the community, or on honoring ancestors who were believed to ride across the night sky. The horse itself, in many ancient cultures, was a symbol of sovereignty, power, and the journey to the other world. A lunar horse galloping across the chalk hills could have been seen as a psychopomp, a guide for the souls of the dead, carrying them into the realm of the ancestors, which was often associated with the moon and the stars. The Uffington White Horse, therefore, stands as a breathtaking fusion of art, astronomy, and spirituality. It is a monument that challenges our modern separation of these categories. For its creators, the beauty of its flowing form, the precision of its potential lunar alignment, and the profound spiritual meaning it held were all part of a single, unified whole. It was a way of drawing power from the cosmos, of mapping their beliefs onto the land, and of creating a permanent, luminous symbol of their identity that would, thanks to 3,000 years of tender, ritual care, gallop on through the centuries, a silent and majestic testament to the human desire to find meaning in the light of the moon. Now we travel back to a time so remote it fundamentally reshapes our understanding of human history. Journey to a barren, sun-baked hilltop in southeastern Turkey, where a series of strange, interlocking stone circles emerge from the earth. This is Göbekli Tepe, and it is not merely old, it is staggeringly ancient, dating back to around 9,600 years before the Common Era. This is the world's oldest known temple complex, a monument built a staggering 6,000 years before Stonehenge and a full 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. What makes this site so revolutionary, so utterly paradigm-shattering, is the identity of its builders. According to everything we thought we knew, the people of this era were simple hunter-gatherers, nomadic bands focused solely on day-to-day survival. They were not supposed to be capable of the sophisticated social organization, the advanced engineering, and the complex symbolic thought required to erect a site of this magnitude. Yet here it is, the architecture is both powerful and enigmatic. The site is composed of multiple circular enclosures, each defined by a ring of massive T-shaped limestone pillars. These are not small stones. The largest pillars weigh over 16 tons and stand 18 feet tall. At the center of each circle, two even taller pillars stand facing each other like silent, monolithic giants. The entire complex was not built up over time. It was carved directly from the living bedrock of the hill itself, a feat that required not only immense labor but a visionary plan. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe, spearheaded by the late German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Schmidt realized immediately that he was looking at something that should not exist. Here was proof that hunter-gatherers could and did come together to create a monumental sacred landscape, overturning the long-held theory that it was only the invention of agriculture, with its settled villages and food surpluses, that made such grand projects possible. At Göbekli Tepe, it appears the temple came first. The desire to build a sacred space may have been the very catalyst that spurred humanity to develop new forms of social structure and ultimately to invent farming to feed the workers. This flips the entire narrative of civilization on its head, but the mystery deepens when we look to the sky. Among the many potential alignments at the site, one of the most compelling involves the brightest star in our night sky, Sirius. Researchers have proposed that the arrangement of certain key pillars within the enclosures aligns with the rising point of Sirius as it would have appeared on the horizon around 11,600 years ago. For a pre-literate culture, the heliacal rising of Sirius, its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, would have been a dramatic and reliable celestial event. Its arrival could have served as a precise annual signal, perhaps marking the beginning of a new year, the start of a specific season, or the time for a great gathering of clans at the site. This suggests that the builders of Göbekli Tepe possessed a sophisticated, long-term astronomical knowledge, patiently observing the slow precession of the stars over generations. This was not just a temple, it was potentially one of humanity's first great observatories. The evidence for this celestial connection is carved directly into the stone. The T-shaped pillars are not blank monoliths. They are covered in a rich tapestry of bas-relief carvings. The iconography is a mesmerizing bestiary of the late Pleistocene world. We see foxes, cranes, scorpions, snakes, wild boars, and fierce predators like lions. These are not random depictions. Many researchers believe they form a complex symbolic language, a system of signs and totems representing different clans or spiritual concepts. Some of the animals are shown in dynamic, narrative scenes, while others are arranged in sequences that might tell a story or encode a myth. The vulture, prominently featured, is often shown in association with headless human figures, leading to interpretations of funerary practices or sky burial rituals where the vulture carries the soul to the afterlife. This intricate symbolism points to a shared mythology, a complex system of beliefs that was powerful enough to unite disparate groups of hunter-gatherers from across the region for a common, sacred purpose. The societal implications of this are enormous. To build Göbekli Tepe required a level of social complexity we never attributed to people of this era. It implies the existence of a project manager, a master architect who could envision the final structure. It implies skilled stoneworkers who knew how to quarry, shape, and transport these colossal pillars without metal tools. Most importantly, it implies a social hierarchy and a system of organized labor. People had to be fed, housed, and motivated. This suggests that religion and astronomy were not byproducts of civilization, but its very foundation. The spiritual yearning to connect with the cosmos and honor the gods may have been the original spark that taught humanity how to cooperate on a grand scale, paving the way for everything that followed. One of the most perplexing and telling aspects of Göbekli Tepe is how it met its end. After more than 1,000 years of use, around 8000 BC, the entire complex was not destroyed or abandoned to the elements. It was deliberately, carefully, and systematically buried. Every enclosure was filled with an immense amount of soil, stone chips, and animal bones, effectively entombing the entire temple complex and preserving it in a state of remarkable integrity for millennia. This was not an act of violence or disrespect, it was a ritual termination. It was as if the people who built it decided to take it out of service, to retire it from the world, sealing its power and its secrets for all time. This intentional burial is what allowed the site to remain so well preserved, but it also adds a final, profound layer of mystery. Why go to such immense effort to hide your greatest achievement? Was it a response to a changing climate, a shift in religious beliefs, or a desire to protect the sacred site from some perceived future threat? We may never know, but this final act underscores the deep, reverential significance Göbekli Tepe held for its creators. When we pull all these threads together, the monumental architecture, the potential Sirius alignment, the complex animal iconography, and the deliberate burial, we are left with a site that challenges our most basic assumptions about human progress. Göbekli Tepe forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What if civilization did not develop in a slow, linear climb from primitivism to complexity? What if there were earlier peaks of cultural and spiritual achievement, now lost to time? The builders of this temple looked up at the night sky, saw the brilliant star Sirius, and were moved to carve its journey into stone, creating a sacred machine that connected their world to the heavens. They demonstrate that human curiosity, the drive to build, and the quest for meaning are far older and far more powerful than we ever dreamed. High on the stark, wind-swept Bolivian Altiplano, at an altitude that leaves visitors breathless, stand the enigmatic ruins of Tiwanaku. Here, the thin, cold air and the immense blue dome of the sky create a feeling of being at the roof of the world, closer to the heavens than to the earth. And it is here, amidst the colossal stone blocks of a long-vanished empire, that one of the most potent celestial alignments in the Americas unfolds each year. Gaze upon the monumental gateway of the sun, a single, massive block of andesite intricately carved with a central, radiating figure often called the staff god. This imposing portal, standing over 9 feet tall and weighing an estimated 10 tons, is not merely a decorative relic, it is a precision-engineered astronomical instrument. On the morning of the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, which falls in June, the first rays of the rising sun strike the gateway with dramatic purpose. The golden light spills directly through the doorway, illuminating the carved figure at its center, a deity believed to represent Viracocha, the creator god in the Andean pantheon. For a few sacred moments, the stone god seems to come alive, bathed in the light of the reborn sun, marking the moment when the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky and begins its vital journey back, bringing with it the promise of longer days and the renewal of life. This breathtaking event, occurring at a site built by the Tiwanaku culture between 500 and 1,000 years after the Common Era, was no happy accident. It was the culmination of a sophisticated worldview that saw no separation between the cycles of the heavens, the rhythms of agriculture, and the power of the divine. The entire city of Tiwanaku was laid out as a grand cosmological diagram, and the gateway of the sun served as its most dramatic focal point. The orientation of the gate to capture the solstice sunrise would have signaled the start of a new annual cycle, a time for great ceremonies, the realignment of the calendar, and rituals to ensure the favor of the gods for the coming growing season. This profound connection between architecture and astronomy was first rigorously studied by the Austrian engineer and archaeologist Arthur Posnansky in the early 20th century. His work, though sometimes controversial in its conclusions about the site's extreme antiquity, correctly identified the deep astronomical knowledge encoded in Tiwanaku's stones. He recognized that the entire complex was a carefully planned celestial observatory. The engineering prowess required to achieve this alignment is as staggering as the alignment itself. The Tiwanaku were master stonemasons working with andesite, an incredibly hard volcanic rock that is notoriously difficult to cut and shape. They quarried these massive blocks from sites many miles away across the vast expanse of Lake Titicaca. Without the wheel, without iron tools, and without draft animals, they transported these multi-ton stones, likely using a combination of log rollers, rope cables made from llama hide, and the sheer muscle power of a highly organized labor force. Their stoneworking techniques were revolutionary. They used a method of pounding the stone with other, harder stones to slowly shape it rather than cutting it. But their true genius lay in their joinery. They fit massive blocks together using a sophisticated system of precisely cut grooves, channels, and notches, effectively locking the stones in place without any mortar. Some blocks feature H-shaped metal clamps poured in place from molten copper or bronze to provide additional stability against earthquakes. This was not just functional construction. It was a form of high art, a way of demonstrating total mastery over the most unforgiving of materials. The Gateway of the Sun itself is a masterpiece of this craft, its single block perfectly shaped and its intricate carvings executed with a fluidity and precision that seems to defy the limitations of their tools. This celestial and architectural knowledge did not die with Tiwanaku. The influence of this culture radiated out across the Andes, creating a legacy that would be inherited and amplified by the later Inca Empire. The Inca saw Tiwanaku as a sacred site of origin, the place where their creator god Viracocha first brought forth the sun, the moon, and the stars. They adopted and adapted Tiwanaku's astronomical principles, their reverence for the solstices, and even their stonemasonry techniques. The iconic, perfectly fitted stone walls of Cusco and Machu Picchu are a direct technological and spiritual descendant of the work first perfected at Tiwanaku. The solstice alignment so crucial to the Inca calendar, such as the famous Inti Raymi festival celebrating the sun god, can be traced back to this earlier civilization. Tiwanaku was the teacher, and the Inca were its most brilliant students, proving that knowledge, especially knowledge of the heavens, is one of the most enduring commodities, passed down through the centuries even as empires rise and fall. To fully understand the significance of the Sun Gate's alignment, one must look beyond the single gateway to the larger sacred geography of the site. Tiwanaku was not built in a random location. It was situated on the southern shores of Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake in the world, which was itself considered a sacred body of water, the place of emergence for the first humans. The entire city plan reflects this cosmic connection. Just a short distance from the Gateway of the Sun lies the Kalasasaya, a vast walled platform that functioned as the primary ceremonial center and a giant calendar in stone. This rectangular platform is precisely oriented to the cardinal directions. Its eastern and western walls contain sight lines that frame the equinox sunrises and sunsets. On the spring and autumn equinox, the sun would rise directly over the eastern corner of the platform, an event that could be observed from the center of the courtyard. This provided a second, critical calendrical marker, dividing the year with solar precision. Furthermore, researchers believe that niches and pillars along the Kalasasaya's walls were used to track the more complex cycles of the Moon and Venus, creating a comprehensive astronomical observatory that governed both time and ritual. This integration of solar, lunar, and planetary cycles into a single architectural complex reveals a society whose priests and rulers were not just leaders, but master astronomers. Their authority derived from their ability to read the language of the heavens and apply it to the needs of the people. So why did the Tiwanaku and later the Inca invest such immense effort into these solar alignments? The answer is written in the very landscape they inhabited. The Altiplano is a harsh environment. At an altitude of over 12,000 feet, frost can occur year-round, and the growing season is short and precarious. Survival depended on an intimate, precise understanding of the solar cycle. Knowing the exact date of the winter solstice was a matter of life and death. It signaled the point after which the sun's strength would return. The risk of catastrophic frost would gradually diminish, and the time for planting the vital crops of potato and quinoa would soon arrive. By building a stone calendar that could predict this turning point with unerring accuracy, the Tiwanaku were not simply practicing religion. They were engaging in a form of applied science essential for their survival. The sun was not just a symbol of a god. It was the god, the ultimate source of life, warmth, and food. Aligning their greatest monuments to its cycle was a way of participating in its power, of harnessing its energy, and of ensuring that the delicate balance between humanity and the unforgiving high-altitude environment was maintained. The gateway of the sun, therefore, stands as a silent stone prayer, a desperate and brilliant plea to the cosmos for continuity, a testament to a civilization that looked to the sky not just for wonder, but for the very means of its existence. Scattered across a wide region of Senegal and the Gambia, nestled amidst baobab trees and quiet villages, lies one of the most extensive and yet least known megalithic sites on the planet. Here, across an area nearly 20,000 square miles in size, over 1,000 stone circles rise from the earth, arranged in precise clusters, their laterite pillars standing in silent, weathered congregation. Erected between 700 and 1,000 years after the Common Era, these are the Senegambian stone circles, a monumental achievement that transforms our understanding of pre-colonial West Africa. Unlike the towering, solitary monoliths of Europe, these circles are more intimate in scale, typically composed of 10 to 24 pillars, each standing up to 8 feet tall and weighing several tons. When you stand among them, you are not in a barren, remote landscape, but in a place that feels deeply integrated with both the community and the cosmos. The most profound revelation about these circles is their intimate dialogue with the night sky. Archaeologists like Hamadi Bakoum, who has dedicated his career to studying these sites, have documented how the arrangements of the pillars are not random. Many of the circles are oriented to frame the rising of specific star clusters on the horizon, particularly Orion and the Pleiades. For the societies that built them, likely a confluence of different ethnic groups including the Sura and the Wolof, these celestial bodies were not distant points of light. Their heliacal rising, their first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, coincided with the beginning of the dry season, a pivotal turning point in the annual cycle. The arrival of Orion in the pre-dawn sky would have served as an unmissable celestial signal that the rains were ending and the time for harvesting, for threshing grains like millet and sorghum, and for organizing great communal rituals had arrived. The circles functioned as both a calendar and a temple, a place where the practical necessities of agriculture were seamlessly woven into the spiritual fabric of the community. The connection to the Pleiades is especially poignant, as this star cluster is associated with fertility and the feminine principle in mythologies across the globe, from the Greek Maya to the Maori Matariki. In the Senegambian context, to build a stone circle that framed the Pleiades was to physically anchor a symbol of abundance and new life into the very heart of the community. It is easy to imagine ceremonies taking place within these circles under the glittering canopy of the dry season sky, with elders interpreting the celestial signs and the community gathering to give thanks for the harvest or to pray for the fertility of the land and the people in the cycle to come. The circles, therefore, were not passive observatories. They were active participants in the cultural and economic life of the people, a sacred technology that synchronized human activity with the immutable rhythms of the universe. The cultural diversity of the builders adds a rich layer of complexity to the site. This was not a monolithic, centralized empire imposing a single design, but rather a shared tradition adopted and adapted by different, likely related, societies across a vast territory. The very existence of such a widespread and consistent practice suggests a deep, underlying cultural unity, a common cosmological understanding that transcended individual tribal identities. The methods of construction reveal a sophisticated knowledge of local materials and logistics. The pillars were quarried from nearby laterite deposits, a type of iron-rich soil that hardens upon exposure to air. Workers would have used fire and water to fracture the bedrock, then painstakingly shape the pillars using stone hammers. Transporting these multi-ton stones, even over relatively short distances, was a formidable task, likely accomplished using rollers made from tree trunks and ropes fashioned from baobab bark or other local fibers. This was not the work of slaves compelled by a tyrant, but almost certainly a communal endeavor, a project undertaken by and for the community itself, reinforcing social bonds and collective identity. Primary function of the circles appears to have been funerary. Excavations have revealed that many of the circles contain human burials, often accompanied by simple grave goods like pottery, iron artifacts, and beads. This creates a powerful, layered symbolism. The stone circles were a landscape of the ancestors. By aligning these burial sites with the stars, the builders were creating a permanent, celestial gateway for the souls of the departed. The deceased were not gone, they were merely transitioning to the sky, joining the ancestors who resided among the constellations. A burial conducted within a circle aligned with Orion was, in a very literal sense, a return to the stars. This belief in an astral afterlife is a profound philosophical concept, one that demonstrates a complex understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. The Senegambian circles are part of a much larger and often overlooked African megalithic tradition. They form the densest concentration of stone circles in the entire world, yet they remain outside the popular narrative of ancient mysteries, which so often focuses on Egypt, Europe, or the Americas. This oversight means we are missing a critical piece of the human story. These circles are a powerful testament to the scientific and spiritual sophistication of pre-colonial African societies. They prove that advanced astronomical knowledge, complex social organization, and monumental architecture were flourishing in West Africa 1,000 years ago, completely independent of influence from other continents. They are a silent rebuttal to outdated and erroneous notions of a continent without history. What these alignments ultimately tell us is that the drive to understand the cosmos and to honor the dead through monumental building is a universal human impulse. The Senegambian stone circles are a West African expression of the same fundamental quest for meaning that we have witnessed at Stonehenge, at Chichen Itza, and at Angkor Wat. They remind us that the night sky was humanity's first shared library, and that across the globe our ancestors looked up, saw the same patterns, and were moved to build, to remember, and to connect their lives on earth to the grand, beautiful, and orderly dance of the heavens above. From the stone circles of West Africa, we voyage across the Indian Ocean to the volcanic highlands of Java, where a mountain of carved stone rises from a lush green plain, not as a fortress or a palace, but as a three-dimensional map of the Buddhist cosmos. This is Borobudur, the world's largest Buddhist temple, a colossal stupa built in the 9th century by the devout Sailendra dynasty. Its form is not that of a conventional building with interior rooms, but a massive, intricate mandala that you walk, a spiritual ascent from the world of desire to the realm of enlightenment. Imagine being a pilgrim over 1,000 years ago, arriving before dawn on the most sacred day of the year, Wesak Day, the full moon that commemorates the Buddha's birth, his attainment of enlightenment, and his final passing into nirvana. As the sun crests the horizon, its first golden rays strike the eastern face of the monument, illuminating the intricate carvings and beginning a slow, deliberate climb up its 9 stacked terraces. This alignment is no mere spectacle. It is a profound architectural sermon, a deliberate fusion of cosmic timing and spiritual symbolism designed to guide the pilgrim on their own journey toward awakening. The entire structure is a masterpiece of archaeoastronomy, its stairways, bell-shaped stupas, and niches all oriented to capture light and shadow during pivotal lunar and solar events, transforming the entire temple into a dynamic celestial clock. The mandala design is the key to understanding Borobudur's genius. A mandala is a sacred geometric diagram representing the universe in microcosm, used in Buddhism as a tool for meditation and spiritual guidance. Borobudur is this concept made literal in stone. The pilgrim's path is a one-way clockwise circumambulation, a ritual walk that spirals ever upward. The journey begins at the massive base, symbolizing the world of desire or Kamadhotu, where beings are bound by their passions. Here, hidden for centuries, are reliefs depicting the law of karma and the consequences of worldly life. As you ascend to the first 4 square terraces, you enter the world of forms, or Rupadhatu. The walls of these galleries are lined with nearly 1,400 narrative panels and over 1,200 decorative panels, illustrating the life of the Buddha, his previous incarnations in the Jataka tales, and the teachings of the sutras. This is a visual encyclopedia of Buddhist doctrine, a permanent stone library designed to instruct and inspire. Finally, after climbing beyond the narrative galleries, you emerge onto the 3 circular terraces, representing the formless world, or Arupadhatu. Here, the solid walls fall away, and you are surrounded by 72 latticed, bell-shaped stupas, each containing a statue of the Buddha. The open air and the panoramic views of the surrounding volcanoes and rice fields create a feeling of liberation and expansiveness. At the very center sits the great central stupa, empty and unadorned, symbolizing the ultimate reality of nirvana, the final, ineffable state beyond form and description. The architectural precision required to achieve the temple's celestial alignments is breathtaking, especially considering the material. Over 2 million blocks of gray andesite, a volcanic stone quarried from local rivers. The builders had no mortar. Instead, they used a complex system of interlocking joints and grooves to fit the stones together, a technique that has allowed the structure to withstand centuries of tropical rains and seismic activity. This was a project of immense communal effort, likely spanning decades, if not generations. The symbolism, however, is an intricate blend of traditions. The Sailendra kings, while fervent Mahayana Buddhists, ruled a population deeply influenced by Hindu culture and indigenous animist beliefs. This syncretism is evident throughout Borobudur. The overall form of a stepped pyramid is reminiscent of the Hindu temple mountains that represent Mount Meru, the axis of the world, yet its purpose and iconography are purely Buddhist. Even the layout of the reliefs follows a specific cosmological order that scholars like J.G. de Kasparis have painstakingly decoded, revealing how the narratives are not just random stories but a carefully plotted cosmic journey. He and others have suggested that the arrangement of certain figures and scenes may align with specific stars, such as the bright star Vega, using the heavens as a divine backdrop for the earthly stories of the Buddha's path. The most dramatic demonstration of this cosmic planning is the equinox alignment. During the spring and autumn equinox, when day and night are of equal length, a moment of perfect balance in the natural world, the sun rises directly in line with the temple's central axis. From a specific vantage point to the east, the sun can be seen to appear precisely behind the great central stupa, crowning the monument with light. This phenomenon transforms the abstract concept of spiritual balance into a tangible, observable event. For the pilgrim witnessing this, it would have been a powerful affirmation that the path they were walking, from the base of worldly illusion to the summit of enlightenment, was in harmony with the fundamental order of the universe itself. The temple was a machine for transformation, and the equinox sun was the key that turned its lock, illuminating the connection between the inner journey of the mind and the outer movement of the cosmos. The story of Borobudur, however, contains a mystery as deep as its philosophy. After several centuries of use, this magnificent center of pilgrimage and learning was abandoned. The reasons remain a subject of debate, but they likely involve a combination of political and natural forces. The power of the Sailendra dynasty waned, and the center of Javanese power shifted to the east of the island. At nearly the same time, a series of colossal volcanic eruptions, likely from Mount Marapi, blanketed the region in thick layers of ash. Borobudur was slowly swallowed by the jungle, its towering form becoming little more than a large, overgrown hill, its secrets known only to local folklore for almost 1,000 years. It was not until the early 19th century, during the brief period of British rule in Java, that the site was rediscovered by the West. Governor-General Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles, hearing local tales of a huge hill of statues, ordered a team to clear the vegetation, revealing one of the world's greatest archaeological treasures from its long slumber. Why did a civilization invest such immense resources into creating this grand cosmic map? The answer lies in the very purpose of Mahayana Buddhism. This was not just a temple for isolated monks, it was a public instrument of salvation. The Sailendra kings, by building Borobudur, were performing an act of immense merit, accruing positive karma not just for themselves but for their entire kingdom. They were creating a permanent physical gateway to enlightenment, accessible to any pilgrim willing to make the journey. The alignment with the stars and the sun was a way of demonstrating that the Buddha's teachings were not a human invention, but a reflection of a universal cosmic law. The path to nirvana was not separate from the world. It was the natural culmination of the world's own inherent order. Borobudur's influence radiated across Southeast Asia, setting a standard for Buddhist art and architecture for centuries. Its model of a cosmic mandala in stone can be seen echoed in temples from Cambodia to Myanmar. It stands as one of history's most sublime achievements, a place where devotion, science, and art merged into a single, unified whole. A stone mountain built not to reach the sky, but to show every human being how to find the universe within. Perched dramatically on a high coastal bluff in southern Sweden, overlooking the vast steel-gray expanse of the Baltic Sea, the Älvstenar or Ale Stones stands as a breathtaking silhouette against the sky. This is not a circle or a row, but a colossal stone ship, a 90-foot-long vessel meticulously crafted from 59 massive boulders, its prow and stern pointing with unwavering intent toward the horizon. Built around the 6th century of the Common Era, during the Scandinavian Iron Age, this monument captures the essence of a culture for whom the sea was both a highway and a holy place. As studied by archaeologists like Martin Rundqvist, the geometry of the ship is astonishingly precise. The two largest stones standing at the prow and the stern act as celestial foresights. During the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the prow in the northeast, and many hours later, sets directly over the stern in the northwest. In the deep of winter, this celestial journey reverses, with the sun rising over the stern in the southeast and setting over the prow in the southwest. The entire ship, therefore, becomes a gigantic stone compass and calendar, framing the sun's extreme yearly journey, a stunningly elegant and permanent way to mark the turning of the year for a community whose survival was tied to the seasons. The primary purpose of this alignment was likely deeply practical, serving as a communal calendar that governed the rhythm of life. For a coastal farming and fishing society, the solstices were not abstract astronomical events. They were critical economic and social signals. The midsummer sunrise bursting over the ship's bow would have heralded the brief, intense period of growth and warmth, a time for planting, for fishing in rich coastal waters, and for gathering resources before the weather turned. Conversely, the winter solstice sunset, framed by the stern, marked the sun's symbolic death and the beginning of the hardest season, but also the promise of its inevitable return. This was a time for feasting on stored supplies, for maintaining tools, for storytelling, and for rituals aimed at ensuring the sun's rebirth. The ship's setting provided an immutable public timepiece, a way for the entire community to synchronize their activities without relying on a privileged caste of priests. Everyone could see the sun's relationship to the stones, making the calendar a shared, democratic knowledge that reinforced social cohesion and collective planning. Beyond its function as a solar calendar, Eil Stena is powerfully evocative of the seafaring soul of the Norse people. This was a culture on the cusp of the Viking Age, a time when their longships would soon dominate the waterways of Europe. To build a ship of stone permanently moored on a high cliff is to make a profound spiritual statement. In Norse mythology, the sun and moon were not merely celestial bodies, they were deities pursued across the sky by wolves. The sun itself, Sol, was believed to ride in a chariot, but the concept of a sun ship is also deeply rooted in their worldview. The ship was the ultimate symbol of journey, transition, and the passage to the afterlife. Many high-status Viking burials involved placing the deceased in an actual ship, laden with goods for their journey to the realm of the gods. Eil Stena, often speculated to be a burial site itself, though conclusive evidence has been elusive, fits perfectly into this tradition. Folklore speaks of a legendary king named Eil being buried here within his stone vessel. This powerful imagery suggests the monument was not just for the living, but for the dead as well, a symbolic vessel designed to carry the souls of the departed across the sea of the sky, following the path of the sun into the next world. When we place Eil Stena within the wider context of Scandinavian monuments, its uniqueness and its commonalities become even more fascinating. It is the largest of over 2,500 recorded stone ships found throughout Scandinavia, but its precise solar alignments set it apart as a particularly sophisticated example. It invites comparison with other major Nordic sites, such as the nearby and far older tomb of Kivik, which also features ship-like settings and solar symbolism. Unlike the vast communal burial fields of earlier periods, Eil Stena has a singular, commanding presence, suggesting it may have served as a central ceremonial site for a larger region, a place where different clans or communities would gather for the great solstice festivals. Its location on the coast is also highly significant. From this high bluff, the view encompasses a huge swath of the Baltic, making it a perfect landmark for navigation. Sailors out at sea could use its distinctive silhouette against the sky to orient themselves, while the solstice alignments themselves could have provided a crude but effective calendar for planning voyages, knowing when the weather would be most favorable for crossing open water to trading partners or new lands. The enduring mystery of Eil Stena lies not in how it was built, but in the worldview it represents. It requires us to imagine a society that saw no division between the practical and the spiritual, between science and myth. The same people who could engineer a structure of such precise astronomical alignment were the ones who told epic tales of gods and giants. For them, the sun was both a life-giving star whose path could be measured and a divine being whose journey they could honor and influence through ritual. The stone ship is a perfect metaphor for this integrated consciousness. It is a practical calendar, a spiritual vessel, and a grand piece of communal art, all rolled into one. It stands as a powerful prelude to the Viking Age, a testament to a people who were not just fierce raiders, but keen observers of their world, who looked to the sky and the sea and saw them as interconnected parts of a single, sacred whole, a realm to be navigated, understood, and ultimately immortalized in stone. Ascend now from the coastal stone ship of Sweden to the sun-drenched slopes of Mount Parnassus in Greece, to a place that was considered the very navel of the ancient world. Here at the sanctuary of Delphi, the temple of Apollo was not merely built upon the land, it was intricately woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself. Constructed in the 4th century before the Common Era, this magnificent temple was precisely oriented so that its central axis aligned with the heliacal rising of the Pleiades star cluster. Each spring, as this glittering group of stars first became visible in the pre-dawn sky, it would appear to rise directly over the mountains to the east, perfectly framed by the temple's sacred architecture. This was no minor decorative detail. In the Greek imagination, the Pleiades were far more than 7 sisters of myth. They were celestial markers of profound practical and spiritual importance. Their appearance in the spring sky heralded the beginning of the safe sailing season, when the fierce winter storms of the Mediterranean had subsided, allowing for trade, colonization, and warfare to resume across the wine-dark sea. More profoundly, the Pleiades were intimately associated with Apollo himself, the god of light, prophecy, and cosmic order. By aligning his primary temple with their annual return, the Greeks were creating a direct physical link between the celestial rhythm and the divine wisdom that flowed from this, the most powerful oracle on earth. The alignment would have served as a spectacular, unmissable signal that the time for the greatest prophetic ceremonies was at hand, drawing pilgrims, diplomats, and kings from every corner of the Hellenic world to seek the gods' counsel at the moment when heaven and earth were in perfect harmony. The spiritual power of Delphi was believed to emanate from a profound geological mystery. Beneath the temple floor lay a small, enclosed chamber known as the Aditon, the innermost sanctum where the Pythia, the priestess of Apollo, would deliver her famous prophecies. Ancient sources, including the historian Plutarch, who once served as a priest at Delphi, describe a chasm in the rock from which intoxicating vapors would rise. The Pythia would seat herself on a tripod over this fissure, inhaling the sweet-smelling pneuma or sacred breath rising from the earth. In her trance-like state, she would utter the often cryptic words that were then interpreted and versified by attending priests. This was the beating heart of the oracle, a place where the solid earth itself seemed to open a conduit to the divine. The celestial alignment of the temple adds a breathtaking layer to this already potent scene. It is compelling to imagine that during the key period of the Pleiades rising, the architecture of the temple may have been designed to allow the faint light of this specific star cluster to penetrate the shadowy Aditon. A shaft or an intentionally placed aperture could have channeled this celestial light into the chamber, mingling the sacred breath of the earth with the sacred light of the heavens at the precise moment the Pythia delivered Apollo's will. This fusion of the chthonic and the cosmic would have created an overwhelming sensory and spiritual experience, reinforcing the belief that Delphi was truly the omphalos, the navel of the world, the point where the earthly, the celestial, and the divine realms converged. The cultural impact of this alignment extended far beyond the temple walls, shaping the very identity of the Hellenic world. Delphi was not just a religious site, it was the geopolitical and cultural center of ancient Greece. City-states engaged in ferocious wars would pause to consult the oracle before battle. Colonies were only founded after receiving Apollo's blessing on their proposed locations through the Pythia. The treasuries that lined the sacred way, filled with offerings from powerful cities like Athens and Sparta, were stone testaments to the oracle's immense political influence. The alignment with the Pleiades, an event observed by all Greeks, would have synchronized this entire pan-Hellenic activity. It created a shared celestial calendar that governed not just agriculture and sailing, but also diplomacy, warfare, and statecraft. When the Pleiades rose, it was time to journey to Delphi. This shared pilgrimage, timed to a universal celestial event, reinforced a sense of common Greek identity amidst the constant squabbling of the city-states. They might fight among themselves, but they all looked to the same stars and heeded the same god, whose wisdom was channeled through a temple aligned with the heavens. This sophisticated integration of astronomy into sacred architecture did not happen in an intellectual vacuum. The 4th century before the Common Era was a golden age of Greek science, a time when philosophers and mathematicians were systematically seeking to understand the laws of the natural world. Astronomers like Eudoxus of Cnidus created sophisticated geometric models to explain the complex motions of the planets, moving beyond myth and into mathematical prediction. This growing scientific awareness undoubtedly influenced the architects and priests of the era. The builders of the Temple of Apollo were likely informed by this emerging knowledge, understanding that the cosmos operated according to a rational, beautiful order. Aligning their most sacred structure with a predictable, repeating celestial event was a way of honoring this cosmic rationality. It was a declaration that the God of light was also the God of reason, and that his prophecies were not chaotic mumblings but insights flowing from a universe governed by intelligible laws. The temple became a bridge between the old world of chthonic mystery and the new world of philosophical inquiry, a place where the intoxicating vapors from the earth met the precise, predictable light of the stars. So why did the Greeks, the founders of Western rationalism, so deeply weave astronomy into their sacred spaces? The answer lies in their fundamental desire to find cosmos, a word that meant both order and beauty in a seemingly chaotic world. For them, the universe was not a random collection of events. It was a harmonious, well-ordered system. The movements of the stars were the most visible and perfect expression of this divine order. By building their temples to mirror this celestial harmony, they were attempting to bring that divine order down to earth. A temple aligned with the Pleiades was not just a building pointing at some stars. It was a microcosm of the macrocosm, a physical anchor that tied their community, their politics, and their spirituality to the eternal and beautiful motions of the heavens. It was the ultimate expression of their pursuit of knowledge, a pursuit that sought to understand the laws of nature not in opposition to the gods, but as the very language the gods used to speak to humanity. Delve deep beneath the rice paddies and quiet villages of Zhejiang province in China, and you will find an enigma that rivals any of the grand structures we have explored under the open sky. This is not a temple reaching for the heavens, but its inverse, a hidden, subterranean realm carved with breathtaking precision into the very bedrock of the earth. The Longyu Caves are a breathtaking labyrinth of 24 hand-carved caverns, a colossal underground city discovered entirely by accident in 1992 by a curious local farmer draining a pond. What he revealed was not a natural grotto, but an artificial world of staggering scale and sophistication. Each cavern is a monumental hall, supported by massive, sculpted pillars that hold up ceilings soaring up to 100 feet high, with the total excavated area covering an astonishing 30,000 square meters. The walls and ceilings are uniformly decorated with a masterful pattern of parallel chisel marks, arranged in a series of bands that sweep across the stone in a unified, artistic style. This is not rough excavation. It is underground architecture executed with the precision and aesthetic sensibility of a grand imperial project. And it is here, in this sunless world, that some researchers believe the ancient builders encoded one final, profound celestial alignment, turning the Earth itself into a mirror of the night sky. The most compelling theory, championed by archaeologists like Yong Hong, suggests that the placement of the massive support pillars within the caverns is not random. Their positions and the orientations of certain chambers appear to correspond with the patterns of major constellations, particularly the unmistakable shape of the Big Dipper. In traditional Chinese astronomy, the Big Dipper, known as the Northern Dipper, was not just a collection of stars, it was the celestial chariot of the god Daomu, a central deity in Taoist cosmology whose movements were believed to govern time, fate, and the rhythm of the seasons. An underground complex aligned with this constellation would have been a powerful symbolic act, creating a microcosm of the cosmos in a hidden, sacred space. This connection deepens when we consider the potential alignment with the pole star. In Chinese imperial cosmology, the pole star was the unmoving pivot of the heavens, the celestial counterpart to the emperor on Earth, the still point around which the entire universe revolved. If a specific chamber or a central pillar within the Longyu caves was deliberately oriented toward the north, symbolically aligning with this celestial anchor, it would transform the entire complex from a mere quarry into a profound spiritual statement, a hidden axis mundi, an underground center of the world where the emperor or his representatives could commune with the unchanging order. The cosmos, the sheer logistics of the cave's construction border on the unbelievable and force us to confront the limits of what we know about ancient Chinese engineering. The scale of the excavation is almost incomprehensible. Conservative estimates suggest that the removal of the solid, red sandstone would have required the extraction of nearly 1 million cubic meters of rock. To put that in perspective, that is enough material to fill over 200 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The question of how this was achieved and with what tools is a mystery in itself. The builders would have worked in near-total darkness, illuminating their progress with flickering oil lamps. They used simple iron chisels and hammers, yet achieved surfaces that are smooth, perfectly angled, and decorated with those consistent decorative markings. The precision of the pillars and the walls indicates an advanced understanding of structural engineering to prevent collapse, and the fact that not a single tool or inscription has been found within the caves only deepens the shroud of mystery. This was a project of immense, organized labor, yet it is completely absent from the historical record, as if it was meant to be forgotten. This silence in the historical texts fuels the debate over the cave's true purpose. Were they an underground observatory? While they lack the direct sightlines of a structure like Chichen Itza, the symbolic representation of the stars on the ceiling and walls could have served a ritualistic astronomical function, a place for priests to enact celestial rituals safe from the prying eyes of the common world. Alternatively, they may have been a secret imperial retreat or a ceremonial complex for the Qin dynasty, known for its monumental projects like the Terracotta Army and the first version of the Great Wall. The Qin emperor was obsessed with immortality and his connection to the cosmos. A hidden, star-aligned underworld would have been the perfect venue for rituals aimed at securing his divine mandate and eternal life. Another, more practical theory suggests they were simply a quarry, providing the stone for a nearby city. But this fails to explain the immense effort spent on aesthetic details like the uniform chisel marks, the sculpted pillars, and the sheer architectural grandeur. A quarry does not need decorated ceilings and perfectly smoothed, angled walls. The motivation seems to have been far greater than mere resource extraction. The Longyou Caves, in their silent, monumental grandeur, serve as a fittingly mysterious capstone to our global journey. They encapsulate all the themes we have encountered: the drive to monumentalize, the desire to align human creation with cosmic patterns, and the breathtaking ingenuity of ancient engineers. They challenge our modern arrogance, reminding us that vast chapters of human history are written not in books but in stone, and that some of the greatest chapters remain unread. What motivated a civilization to invest such staggering effort into a project meant to be hidden from the world? The answer may be the most profound of all, that the ultimate expression of human connection to the cosmos was not always a tower pointing to the stars, but sometimes a sanctuary carved deep within the earth, a secret mirror held up to the heavens, ensuring that even in the deepest darkness, the order of the universe was never forgotten. As our journey across the globe and through the millennia draws to a close, a profound and unifying truth emerges from the silent stones. From the pyramids of Giza to the Moai of Rapa Nui, from the Gothic spires of Chartres to the subterranean wonder of the Longyou Caves, we find not a series of isolated anomalies, but a chorus of human expression singing the same fundamental song. These 25 alignments, and the countless others we have not had time to explore, reveal a shared pattern etched into the very soul of our species, an innate, unquenchable drive to connect our earthly existence with the grand cosmic dance above. This was far more than a practical necessity for agriculture or navigation. It was a spiritual imperative. Ancient peoples looked at the sun, the moon, and the stars and saw not random balls of plasma and rock, but a living, breathing, conscious universe. They saw gods, ancestors, and the very source of order and meaning. By investing immense communal resources, generations of labor, vast quantities of material, and the full weight of their cultural imagination into building monuments that mirrored the heavens, they were performing the ultimate act of participation. They were not just observing the cosmos, they were building a bridge to it, physically anchoring their world to the divine clockwork of the sky, ensuring that their lives, their harvests, and their societies remained in harmony with the fundamental rhythms of creation. This universal curiosity, this need to find our place in the cosmos, is perhaps the defining characteristic of our humanity. The late, great astronomer Carl Sagan captured this beautifully when he reflected that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. He saw in our ancient ancestors the same spark that drives modern science, a profound curiosity about where we come from and what our role in this vast universe might be. The builders of Stonehenge tracking the solstice, the Maya priests charting the cycles of Venus, and the Polynesian wayfinders navigating by the Southern Cross were all engaged in the same essential quest for understanding. They were the first scientists and the first philosophers, using the most advanced technology available to them, stone, geometry, and patient observation to decode the mysteries of existence. This shared human instinct to seek patterns, to find order in the chaos, and to look up at the night sky with a sense of wonder is a thread that connects us directly to every civilization we have explored. It suggests that our modern technological society is not a departure from this ancient past, but a continuation of it, using different tools to answer the very same eternal questions. A question that naturally arises from this global tapestry is whether these similarities are evidence of a lost, interconnected global civilization or the independent flowering of the same human genius in disparate lands. The diffusionist theory, which suggests a shared source of knowledge, perhaps a sophisticated seafaring culture like a hypothetical Atlantis, is a captivating one. Could ancient mariners have traversed the oceans, carrying the principles of astronomy and monumental architecture from Egypt to Mesoamerica, or from Mesopotamia to the Andes? While there is little concrete archaeological evidence for such direct contact on a global scale, the possibility of more localized exchanges is compelling. The spread of megalithic building techniques across Neolithic Europe or the shared astronomical focus in Mesoamerica certainly suggests ideas traveling along trade routes. However, the independent invention of strikingly similar concepts is equally, if not more, plausible. This phenomenon, known as polygenesis, points to something even more remarkable about the human mind. Faced with the same fundamental problems, the need to track time, to predict seasons, and to understand the forces that govern life, different cultures, separated by continents and oceans, often arrived at shockingly similar solutions. The independent development of precise solar calendars by the Egyptians, the Maya, and the builders of Cahokia's wood henge is not a sign of communication. It is a testament to the universal power of human observation and logic. It reveals that the scientific method observe, hypothesize, test is not a modern Western invention, but an innate human capacity that has been applied for thousands of years. The specific forms these monuments took were also deeply shaped by their environmental contexts, creating a beautiful dialogue between culture and landscape. The massive stone circles of wet, temperate northern Europe, like Callanish and Stonehenge, used the horizon as their canvas. The Nazca, in their rainless desert, created their astronomical markers on a vast, flat plain, using the Earth itself as their medium. The Khmer Empire, battling a powerful monsoon cycle, integrated their celestial alignments with a massive hydraulic system, turning their temples into reflections of both the starry sky and the life-giving waters below. The Polynesians, surrounded by the featureless expanse of the Pacific, encoded their star lore not in static stone, but in the dynamic art of wayfinding and the sacred geography of the Maori. This adaptability shows that while the impulse to connect with the cosmos was universal, the expression of that impulse was uniquely tailored to the challenges and opportunities of each local environment. The monuments were not imposed upon the landscape, they grew out of it, a collaboration between human vision and the raw materials of the earth. Ultimately, what these alignments reveal about human cognition is as profound as what they reveal about the stars. They are evidence of a brain hardwired for pattern recognition, for long-term planning, and for abstract, symbolic thought. The ability to observe the slow precession of the stars over a lifetime, or the 18.6-year lunar cycle, and then to encode that knowledge into a permanent structure meant to last for millennia, requires a cognitive leap of breathtaking scale. It demonstrates foresight, a shared cultural memory, and a capacity to think in terms of cycles far beyond the span of a single human life. This was not the work of primitive peoples, it was the work of genius. The Göbekli Tepe pillars, raised by hunter-gatherers over 12,000 years ago, stand as a powerful rebuttal to the idea that complex thought and society are solely the products of agriculture. They suggest that the human mind has always been capable of grandeur, that the seeds of science, art, and religion were planted deep in our prehistoric past. These monuments are the ultimate expression of that cognitive potential, an externalization of our internal quest for meaning, a physical manifestation of our deepest thoughts about time, death, and our place in the universe. So, why do these patterns persist across millennia? What is the enduring lesson of these silent, aligned stones for us today in our age of satellites and quantum physics? They teach us about the power of collaboration and the timeless nature of innovation. Not a single one of these wonders was built by a lone individual. Each one required the coordinated effort of an entire community, a shared vision that transcended individual lives. The knowledge was collective, passed down through generations, each adding to the grand design. This speaks to a model of innovation that is not about solitary genius, but about communal purpose. Furthermore, these sites challenge our modern, often arrogant, assumption that we are the first to ask big questions or to achieve great things. They are a humbling reminder that human history is not a simple, linear progression from superstition to science. It is a story of peaks and troughs, of brilliant cultures rising, flourishing with profound knowledge, and eventually fading, their wisdom sometimes lost for centuries. The alignments are a testament to a different kind of technology, one based on a deep, intimate relationship with the natural world and the cosmos, a technology of integration rather than domination. They invite us to look up at the night sky with the same sense of wonder as our ancestors, to see it not as a void to be conquered, but as a shared heritage that has inspired humanity's greatest achievements. In protecting these sites and striving to understand them, we do more than just preserve the past. We honor a fundamental part of our own identity, reconnecting with the universal human spirit that has always reached for the stars. And so we reach the end of our global pilgrimage, a journey that has taken us across 6 continents and through thousands of years of human history. From the shadow of the Great Pyramid to the silent gaze of the Moai, from the intricate labyrinths of Maltese temples to the colossal stone ships of Scandinavia, a single, powerful truth has emerged from the stones themselves. Our ancestors, in cultures separated by vast oceans and unbridgeable millennia, all shared a common vision. They did not look at the night sky as a cold, empty void, but as a living, breathing guidebook, a divine clock, and an endless source of wonder and inspiration. These alignments are not merely architectural quirks or happy accidents of geography. They are deliberate, profound statements etched into the very bones of the earth, a testament to a universal human drive to find our place within the grand cosmic order. They defy the simple logic of maps and borders, pointing instead to a shared experience of awe that transcends time, culture, and language, connecting us to every human who has ever looked up at the stars and felt a sense of both insignificance and profound belonging. It brings to mind the powerful reflection of the astronomer Neil deGrasse Tyson, who so eloquently reminded us that we are not merely inhabitants of this universe, but that the universe itself is woven into our very being. Its laws govern our biology, its starlight fuels our imagination, and its silent, majestic order is echoed in the monuments our ancestors built to honor it. This shared inheritance invites you, the next time you find yourself beneath a clear night sky, to pause for a moment. Look up, not with the passive glance of a modern observer, but with the fresh eyes of an explorer. See the constellations not just as patterns, but as the same celestial guides that inspired a temple in Greece, a pyramid in Mexico, and a stone circle in Scotland. Let your mind wander to the ancient engineers and priests, the farmers and kings, who invested their entire world into building these eternal stone conversations with the heavens. What secrets are we still missing? What whispers from our collective past are still waiting to be decoded in the angles of a fallen menhir or the orientation of a forgotten tomb? The quest is far from over. We would love to continue this conversation with you. In the comments below, tell us which of these 25 alignments captured your imagination the most. Was it the mathematical precision of the Great Pyramid's mirror to Orion, the dramatic serpent of light slithering down Kukulkan's pyramid, or the haunting lunar mystery of the Callanish Stones. Your curiosity is what fuels this ongoing exploration. By subscribing to the channel, you join a community of fellow seekers, ensuring that we can continue to bring you these journeys into the heart of historical mysteries. Together, we become the keepers of this ancient flame. We honor the legacy of those visionary builders not by simply marveling at their work, but by continuing their quest, the eternal human quest for knowledge, for connection, and for understanding the beautiful, mysterious universe that is, and always has been.